Chapter 1073. 8,000 men were ganging up on 7 people, and all of them were burly men between 12 feet and 15 feet tall. Their skin was so dark that it looked as if they were made of steel. Their clothes were ragged, with only dozens of cloth belts hanging on their bodies, exposing their strong muscles that looked as if they had been chopped out by knives and axes. Due to them standing motionlessly on the demon god's body for a long time, a large amount of dust had accumulated between their muscles, making them look like steel figurines that were buried in an ancient tomb. They were filled with an indescribable evil aura. The undead army soldier who had received the order to severely injure the South Emperor with one punch only used 30% of his strength. It was pure brute force, and he did not use any magic or divine ability. The power of the punch was comparable to the full force attack of an ordinary primordial immortal. At the very least, the South Emperor's protective immortal robe, which was a primordial immortal weapon, was shattered by the punch and left a huge fist mark on his immortal body. If not for the protection of the immortal robe, the punch would have destroyed the South Emperor's immortal body. Wu Qi also felt that he had gone too far when 8,000 undead army soldiers with such terrifying cultivation bases ganged up on one person. He shook his head and counted with his fingers for a while. Suddenly he burst into laughter. He was so proud that he almost trembled. Not only did the Wahuang clan have a Dao-fusing expert who did not form a faction, but the 7 Buddhas and 9 Dao sects had established the Buddhism and Taoism sections. Did they have so many powerful soldiers? Together with those hermit cultivators, the Dao sects might have 8,000 Dao reasoning realm primordial immortals. But the Buddhism sects were far less powerful than the Dao sects. All the ancient Buddhas and Buddhas they had added up to about 3,000 to 4,000. With this power, Wu Qi would have the strength to fight the Buddhism sects head-on. Wu Chang had really done a good deed. The rest of the undead army soldiers hovered motionlessly in the void. Only about 100 of them threw their fists at Wu Chang and the 6 great celestial emperors, who were protected by the 5 light curtains. The Big Dipper Emperor's sky-veiling flag of chaos had been snatched from Liu Bang by Wu Qi, so the 6 great celestial emperors only had 5 supreme treasures of primordial chaos to protect them. With the help of the 5 supreme treasures, they could barely hold on. However, these undead warriors were indeed immortal. Their strength was boundless. In just a few breaths of time, the hundreds of warriors who besieged them had punched at least tens of thousands of times, and each of their punches had stirred up violent fluctuations on the light screen. The 5 great heavenly emperors, who were controlling their natal treasures to protect themselves, sucked in deep breaths. Every time they punched the light barrier, a portion of their magic power would be consumed. Although the Grand Mist treasure was powerful, it also consumed a lot of magic power. In just a few breaths, the 5 great celestial emperors had consumed more than 40% of their magic power. In just a few more breaths, they would run out of magic power. At that time, the power of the supreme treasures of primordial chaos would not be enough to protect them, and they might be captured alive by the undead army soldiers. Ziwei Lingying Great Celestial Emperor took a deep breath and growled, "Wu Chang, can't you control these people now that you've lost the seal?" Looking at Ziwei Lingying Great Celestial Emperor with an ashen face, Wu Chang slowly nodded and said, "The seal is the Myriad Ghost Seal, a precious treasure of the human race. It was crafted by the strongest High Oracle during the era of the Human Clan Alliance with his own flesh, blood, and soul, as well as millions of evil ghosts. These warriors are the strongest of the human race. How could I control them without the Myriad Ghost Seal?" "You fool!" snapped Big Dipper Emperor in a cold voice. "How could you let them take the seal from you?" Cold sweat trickled down Wu Chang's forehead. His body trembled violently as he cursed under his breath, gnashing his teeth. He didn't expect such a thing to happen, to be able to take the seal of 10,000 ghosts from his hands without him knowing. Could it be that the Taoist ancestor or the Buddhist ancestor personally took action? What made him feel even more hopeless was how these 8,000 soldiers of the undead army had become so powerful. Years ago, when he led his people to betray the human race and was imprisoned by Wu Xian and several celestial emperors, he ordered his people to flee to this top-secret place with the 8,000 soldiers of the undead army. It was a lifeless and remote place, and no one had discovered the army of the undead army and his people hiding here for so many years. But why had these soldiers of the undead army become so powerful? Years ago, when his people fled with them, the 8,000 soldiers of the undead army had just taken the elixir of immortality. Among them, there were only 3 to 5 tribal leaders whose overall strength was comparable to a primordial immortal, while the rest were only as strong as a gold immortal. At that time, the undead army had just consumed the elixir of immortality and didn't have the characteristics of being indestructible. Moreover, they weren't as strong as the combined forces of the Heavenly Court and the Wuxian clan. That was why he asked his clansmen to bring them here to live in seclusion. But now, each of the 8,000 soldiers of the undead army had the strength to fight a Tao-reasoning primordial immortal, and there were nearly 100 of them whose cultivation base he could not figure out. Although he had been imprisoned in the celestial court for hundreds of generations of celestial emperors, without his control, these soldiers of the undead army could not cultivate on their own. So how could they have such powerful cultivation bases? Impossible! Wu Chang roared in a hoarse voice. Impossible! How could they have become so strong? Even if their bodies are immortal, their souls are in my hands, and they could not have cultivated on their own. They could not have become so strong. Wu Qi had the same question. The strength of the 8,000 soldiers of the undead army was really terrifying. Their souls were imprisoned by the myriad ghost seal, and their bodies outside were just puppets that obeyed orders. They did not know how to cultivate on their own, so how could they be so strong? But who cared? The stronger the undead army's cultivation base, the better. Looking at the 6 great celestial emperors who could barely protect themselves with the help of 5 supreme treasures of primordial chaos, Wu Qi felt refreshed. If these soldiers of the undead army were equipped with powerful magical treasures and armors, they would be the perfect war machine. Be it the Buddhist League or the Tao League, Wu Qi would not be afraid of anyone, unless it was an almighty expert of the Tao-fusing realm. Grinning coldly, Wu Qi revealed himself, holding Princess Zhonglu and Yi Xia's little hands. 9 Tails rushed out of the encirclement impatiently, spitting saliva and letting out a long, shrill cry of joy. Instinctively, Ao Buzin and Catfish licked the corners of their mouths, and their eyes turned green. Gold Horn, Silver Horn, Gold Feather, and Silver Feather simply transformed into their true forms of dragon pythons of fire and ice, opening their mouths and staring greedily at the 6 great celestial emperors. Their hungry eyes were fixed on the great celestial emperors, who looked like sages and emperors. They looked delicious no matter how they looked at them. Wu Chang, who was covered in disgusting mucus and had 3 heads and 6 arms, had a hideous appearance. Unless there was nothing good to eat, no one would eat him. Especially since this guy had a strange, undying and indestructible body. If he couldn't digest it and got a stomachache after eating him, what should he do? Sensing the crazy appetite of Ao Buzin and others, the faces of the 6 great celestial emperors turned green. But when they saw Wu Qi and Princess Zhonglu, Ziwei Linging's celestial emperor suddenly breathed a deep sigh, shook his head, and said, "King of Eastsea. Heh, it seems we've all underestimated you. Are you the one who took away Wu Chang's seal of myriad ghosts just now?" As Wu Qi raised his hand, 36,000 Kunwu swords shot out in streams of light, forming a colossal fiend-slaying sword formation that completely sealed off this part of the void. The heaven refinement cauldron gradually flew up with a distant and sonorous rumble, and it suppressed the core of the sword formation, causing the sword formation to be completely flawless and unable to transmit any information out. Seeing Wu Qi's behavior, the faces of the 6 great celestial emperors, who were being beaten by hundreds of undead soldiers, fell instantly. How could they not recognize the most famous ferocious formation of the human race? As for Wu Chang, he was older than Xin Yuan. When he betrayed the human race, Xin Yuan had not yet ascended to the throne. Naturally, he did not recognize the killing formation with which Xin Yuan had dominated Pangu continent and laid the foundation of the human race. In the void, the unique sword light of Kunwu swords flashed, and hundreds of surging sword energies came whistling over and injected into the bodies of the undead soldiers who were swinging their fists. These undying warriors, who were powerful to begin with, let out frenzied roars. As they swung their fists, streaks of silver sword light that were as thick as water buckets appeared. The light shields formed by the 5 primordial supreme treasures trembled violently and were nearly broken. Ziwei Lingying grew anxious. "How dare you, King of East Sea, commit regicide?" he snapped. Wu Qi laughed along with Princess Zhonglu, Xia, and the others around him. He shook his head and sighed. How did such a fool become a celestial emperor? Regicide? I didn't kill Emperor Du, so how is this regicide? Killing you will be a great contribution to the human race. Smiling and nodding at Ziwei Lingying, whose face was unsightly, Wu Qi turned to Wu Chang and said, "As for you, Wu Chang, I've long heard of your name. He, you are the culprit who betrayed the human race, and the leader of the forbidden clans. After killing you, your head can be exchanged for a lot of good things from Du, right?" The eyes of the 6 great celestial emperors flickered, and no one knew what they were thinking. Wu Chang, on the other hand, sneered with a gloomy face, "Boy, I have an immortal body." Wu Qi shook his head. After pondering for a while, he shook his head and said, "There is nothing in this world that is immortal. Even Pangu world can collapse and be destroyed, and even Dao fusing experts can be killed, not to mention you, Wu Chang." Without wasting time with the 6 great celestial emperors and Wu Chang, Wu Qi raised his hand. The Vajramuni, which had sealed the 6 revered ones of the Buddhist League and countless ancient Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and Arhats, shot out along with a fierce gust of wind. A dazzling beam of golden light smashed heavily on the 5 dimmed light shields. Amidst a deafening rumble, the South Emperor's crimson divine bell was knocked flying hundreds of miles away. The mirror shot out from between the great celestial emperor's brows with a wail as it was knocked far away. The East Great Celestial Emperor's coiling dragon pillar glinting with a green light was knocked spinning away, and the West Great Celestial Emperor's white sword, which glowed with a dazzling light and shook the void with an immense sword energy, was also thrown out by Vajramuni. Only the middle extreme Emperor's thick, earthy yellow tortoise shell barely protected everyone. The faint yellow light shield was extremely heavy, and it barely withstood the full force of the Vajramuni. Wu Qi exclaimed, "Good, this treasure is perfect for protection. Zixian Xia, which one of you wants this tortoise shell?" Xia and Princess Zhonglu twitched their lips at the same time. Which beautiful girl would be willing to use a tortoise shell to protect herself? Only Aobuzan raised his hand excitedly and laughed out loud. Lao Tzu doesn't care. Lao Tzu has killed quite a few female tortoises, so what's the big deal about using a tortoise shell to protect myself? Amidst Aobuzan's wild laughter, Wu Qi gripped the Vajramuni and struck it down again with all his might. Chi coughed blood as the golden beam shot out by the Vajramuni trapped the 6 great celestial emperors. Chapter 1074. 6 great celestial emperors were captured in one fell swoop. Apart from Big Dipper Emperor, the natal treasures of the other 5 great celestial emperors gave a mournful cry and swooped down at the same time, smashing toward Wu Qi's head in a desperate manner. The spirituality of these supreme treasures of primordial chaos was not weaker than that of living beings, and even the spirituality of ordinary primordial immortals was far inferior to that of these spiritual creatures born in the chaos. Seeing that their master was captured alive, and that Wu Qi was the culprit, the 5 supreme treasures smashed down from above, and a violent aura was vaguely spreading out from their cores. Surprisingly, the 5 supreme treasures were going to self-detonate and fight to the death. Wu Qi was taken aback by the violent supreme treasures of primordial chaos. They were going to self-detonate when their masters were captured alive? The sky-veiling flag of chaos rose whistling into the air. A black mist enveloped the surroundings, and the 5 supreme treasures immediately lost track of Wu Qi's aura. A dazzling golden light split out from the Vajramuni's body. After the light rushed out for thousands of feet, it split into 5 beams and landed on the 5 supreme treasures. The 5 supreme treasures were no longer under the control of human beings and could only act on their own spiritual nature. A misty green light burst out of the heaven refining cauldron, and the 5 supreme treasures fell into it. Yuan Ling's true flame and the heaven refining cauldron's true flame merged into one, burning the 5 supreme treasures fiercely. The 5 great celestial emperors grunted in unison as purple gold blood oozed out of their 7 orifices. The divine souls they had cast on their supreme treasures were forcibly broken by Wu Qi, and their divine souls were severely injured by the backlash. Their spirits immediately became listless, and their bodies shriveled like a deflated balloon. Wu Qi made a gesture to the 6 great celestial emperors. Laughing strangely, Ao Buzan immediately pounced on them and swiftly rummaged through their bodies. In just a few seconds, the 6 great celestial emperors' 12 storage rings, dozens of protective jade pendants, jade talismans, and their clothes, shoes, and socks were all taken away by Ao Buzan. If it had not been for Princess Zhonglu and Yi Xia, who wanted to save some face for the 6 great celestial emperors, Ao Buzan would have taken away all their underpants. As the masters of the celestial court, the underpants worn by the 6 great celestial emperors were made of silk threads spat out by colorful spirit silkworms, and inlaid with various fire-repelling pearls, dust-repelling pearls, and other precious treasures. The cost of each underpants was comparable to that of a primordial immortal weapon. Wu Qi was not interested in the underpants worn by others, but Ao Buzan, Goldhorn, and Silverhorn did not have so many taboos. They were whispering to each other about which great celestial emperor had the smoother skin, which had the more muscular muscles, and which one tasted better. At the same time, they were arguing about who should get the 6 primordial immortal weapons. In front of the pale-faced great celestial emperor, Ao Buzan laughed and said, "Lao Tzu is not greedy either. Lao Tzu's toys are several times bigger than yours, so he has to take a few more underpants. Lao Tzu gets 3 and you 2 get 3. That's fair and reasonable." Goldhorn and Silverhorn flew into a rage. They angrily spat at Ao Buzan. What did he mean by his toys are several times bigger than ours? Did he have to wear an extra pair of underpants just because his toys were bigger? This was simply preposterous. This was simply going too far. The 3 of them immediately quarreled with each other, and the topic of their argument shifted from the underpants of the 6 great celestial emperors to the bodies of the 6 great celestial emperors. Ao Buzan suggested that the 6 great celestial emperors should divide the underpants equally, with each of them having 1 underpants. But Goldhorn and Silverhorn firmly believed that Ziwei Lingying Great Celestial Emperor and the East Great Celestial Emperor were at least half a foot taller than the other 4 Great Celestial Emperors, and that their flesh and blood would be about 10 to 20 kilograms more. The flesh and blood of the Great Celestial Emperors were the aggregates of natural energy, and a single drop of their blood had the effect of allowing a mortal to ascend. The difference of 10 to 20 kilograms was a huge and unacceptable number. At the suggestion of Gold Feather and Silver Feather, Goldhorn and Silverhorn requested that the 6 great celestial emperors should be cut into dumpling stuffing, and then made into a big pot of dumplings. Then, they would share the pot of dumplings equally, so that the benefits of the 6 great celestial emperors could be distributed fairly. The 6 great celestial emperors turned deathly pale. Trembling, they looked at Wu Qi, their minds blank. Once upon a time, when they sat on the thrones of the Hall of Enlightenment and ruled the celestial court, did they ever think that they would have such a day? How could a group of cruel and tyrannical demons and monsters be thinking about how to cook them in the fairest way? They had never encountered such a thing even in their nightmares, for it was a million times more terrifying than a nightmare. Wu Chang, too, stared blankly at Wu Qi. Wu Chang was not imprisoned by Wu Qi with an artifact, but as his cultivation base was only at the early stage of Tao reasoning realm, he was not stupid enough to break through the siege of 8,000 undead soldiers. Now that Wu Qi had mastered the myriad ghost seal, he could perfectly mobilize the 8,000 undead soldiers. Wu Chang reckoned that although he had an immortal body, he could not break through the siege of 8,000 undead soldiers whose cultivation base was stronger than his. Listening to the discussion between Ao Buzan and Goldhorn and Silverhorn, Wu Chang could not help but cry out in despair, "What are you trying to do?" The green eyes of Ao Buzan and the others immediately focused on Wu Chang. Catfish, who had been drooling and saying nothing just now, smacked her lips and said, "This guy is immortal? That's great. In the legends, there is a kind of meat that can be reborn after being cut, and can never be eaten up. Could it be this thing? Tsuke, just give him to me. Today I'll cut off one of his thighs, tomorrow I'll chop off one of his arms, and when I want to eat dumplings stuffed with human liver, I'll dig out a piece of liver and chop it up to make the filling. Hehe, that's better than these 6 great celestial emperors' scriptures. The 6 great celestial emperors, whose faces were pale a moment ago, now had a strange flush on their faces. Catfish's description of Wu Chang's death was just too bizarre. Compared to them being chopped up into dumplings and made into dumplings, what was Wu Chang's death called? No, Wu Chang would not die at all. He would be kept as a meat storage by Catfish, and when she wanted to eat some pork trotters, she could just chop it off his body. If the 6 great celestial emperors were chopped into pieces, they would all die, but Wu Chang would be chopped into pieces, and would never be reincarnated. I am Wu Chang. Wu Chang said dryly, I am a human. Wu Qi rudely interrupted him. He casually threw out a primal purple thunderbolt and smashed it onto Wu Chang's bullhead. The shockingly powerful primal purple thunderbolt shattered his skull and sent it flying in all directions. Wu Chang gave a muffled snort and staggered a few steps back. Shut up, said Wu Qi with a cold grin. I don't care who you are from the human race, you are just a traitor of a clan. An immortal body? Hee, is there really an immortal body in the world? The so-called immortal body is nothing more than not killing enough. Laughing grimly, Wu Qi snorted coldly and said, Wu Chang, I'll give you a chance. Put your soul into the myriad ghost seal and let me control it, and I'll let you live. Otherwise, not only Catfish, but all of them are very hungry for you. You will like a meat that can never be finished, yet has a strong cultivation base and is full of energy. Don't you think you will like it? Catfish, Ao Buzan, Gold Horn, Silver Horn, and the others were drooling at the same time, and even Lord Xianxing was a little eager. Xia even covered her little mouth and giggled. Fiend Monarch, Xia is not interested in meat, but if this Wu Chang is immortal, doesn't that mean his divine soul can be reborn endlessly? Hee, if Xia can devour a part of his divine soul every now and then, can his divine soul be reborn endlessly? I'm really curious. As Xia laughed, a 5-colored light spread around Xia, and the peculiar aura unique to the fiend patriarch from outer domains enveloped the surroundings. Chi-Chi, the 6 great celestial emperors, widened their eyes and stared at Xia in horror. They knew what the aura emanating from Xia meant. She was the heavenly fiend from outer domains that the Tao League and Buddhist League feared the most, and the incarnation of the fiend patriarch, the strongest of the shapeless heavenly fiends from outer domains. Wu Chang's forehead was covered with cold sweat. He swallowed dryly, threw his head back, and said with a wry smile, I, Wu Chang, have a bad fate. Why do I have to do this? Wu Qi impatiently cracked his knuckles, producing a series of cracking noises. Just now, Supremacy Dei had sent him a message that there was a sky-high deal waiting for him to finalize. To be able to cut the flesh and blood of a Buddhist League member was much more profitable than robbing the 6 great celestial emperors. He did not believe that Wu Chang was truly immortal. Ever since he saw the infinite demonic power of the 1,000 Heads Breaker, Wu Qi knew that time was not immortal. It was just that the attack power was not enough. If Wu Chang was really immortal, Wu Qi would use the Heaven Refining Cauldron to refine him. If that did not work, he would capture Wu Chang alive and send him to the Wahuang clan. Then, he would use the 1,000 Spirit Cauldron to return his soul to the most basic soul particles in the world. By then, he would be dead. Wu Chang opened his mouth, but he could not make up his mind to be ordered around by Wu Qi. When he was released from the secret realm of the Celestial Court by the 6 great celestial emperors, he never dreamed that his fate would change so dramatically. He was going to summon an army of the undead to fight with Wu Xian and take back control of the Forbidden Clan. How did he end up like this? Seeing that Wu Chang was just hesitating and unwilling to speak, Wu Qi could not help but feel angry. With a casual point of his finger, the 6 great celestial emperors were dragged into the Heaven Refining Cauldron and imprisoned, howling. Then, he waved his hand and released a stream of pure Yuan Ling true flame toward Wu Chang. He was ready to give it a try and see if this fellow was really immortal. Wu Chang was taken aback, and he cried out hastily, "Fine, fine. I'll obey you today, but, after all, Wu Chang is." Wu Chang's face turned red. Obviously, he wanted to beg Wu Qi for some preferential treatment, but because of his status, he was too embarrassed to say it. After all, he was once an influential figure of the ancient human race, a famous high-ranking official in the alliance of human clans, and the ancestor of the 3 sovereigns and 5 emperors of the human race. Just as Wu Qi was about to scold Wu Chang, hundreds of thousands of mysterious figures suddenly flew up from the huge corpse of the fallen fiend god. Shrouded in thick black smoke, they slowly approached them. A sharp, hoarse voice rang out through the void. "Who are you? Where are you taking us, ancestral gods? Hee, since you dare to come here, you will all stay here." Accompanied by the hoarse voice, countless sharp, fierce, and evil spiritual attacks rushed toward Wu Qi and the others. In just a brief contact, Catfish, Gold Horn, Silver Horn, Gold Feather, Silver Feather, and Lord Xiansheng coughed up blood, and their divine souls were severely injured at the same time. Chapter 1075. Something was not right, something was very wrong. Invisible spiritual attacks kept coming at them, and all the people on Wu Qi's side whose cultivation bases were below the realm of Tao breaking were bleeding from their 7 orifices, and their divine souls were severely injured. Gold Feather and Silver Feather, the 2 sisters with the weakest cultivation bases, were struggling and twisting in the void in pain. They were forced to reveal their true forms. Their beautiful translucent gold and silver scales were cracked with countless eye-catching cracks, from which blood was gushing out like a fountain. Wu Qi's eyes shone with an eerie purple light as he turned to look at the hundreds of thousands of figures. Something was not right, something was really not right. They were all clad in robes made of some kind of very fine wood fiber, and their bodies were shrouded in black smoke. But, under Wu Qi's primordial magical eyes, he could see their faces clearly. The men all had rugged faces. They could not be considered handsome, but they gave off a rough and heavy feeling like a mountain or a boulder. The woman, on the other hand, was like a clear spring stream. She was beautiful beyond compare, but the corners of her eyes and the tips of her brows carried a trace of dark evil aura. She looked ferocious, but also strangely seductive. Any one of them could be called a peerless enchantress in the outside world, the kind of woman who could make men's blood boil, and who would fight to the death for them. Their looks might not be as good as Princess Zhonglu and Yi Xia, but their strange, hellish seduction had added a lot to their beauty. They were a group of stunners who could make the opposite sex shed their blood essence, and even turn into human jerky. But, be it men or women, the strongest few among them were only at the level of the sun oracles of Diyu, roughly equal to the overall strength of a gold immortal. What they practiced was Diyu's magispriest magic, which gathered the mental power of hundreds of thousands of people and turned it into invisible spiritual waves to attack the enemy. Unlike the ever-changing divine abilities and mystic arts of Diyu's oracles, these people's magic was crude and primitive. They attacked the enemy directly with their mental power, and did not have many variations. Although it was an attack without any technique, it had severely wounded the divine souls of Catfish, Lord Xiansheng and the others, nearly killing them on the spot. Wu Qi anxiously and angrily took out the Vajramuni, and a ball of golden light enveloped everyone's body. At the same time, he began to recite the Heart Sutra, using the supreme divine ability of the Buddhist League to extract a great amount of divine soul energy from his natal relic and injected it into the spiritual ocean of Catfish Flood Dragon and the others, repairing their damaged divine souls. There were hundreds of thousands of Sun-class oracles, and only a little more than 10 of them were Sun-class oracles. 90% of the others were Star-class oracles, which was equivalent to the power of Diyu's apprentice oracles, which was equivalent to the power of ordinary cultivators below the Yuan divinity realm. Even if the divine souls of millions of them were added together, they would not be as strong as the divine soul of a Tao reasoning realm primordial immortal. So, how could their divine sense attack hurt Catfish Flood Dragon and the others? With a cold snort, a beam of bright purple light shot out from between Wu Qi's brows. The natal relic he had just formed with the mystic art of Dharamata Heart Sutra transformed into a blinding little sun and shot out. Rings of divine sense visible to naked eyes turned into bright purple ripples that spread out in all directions, greeting the invisible mental attack coming at them. The hoarse and unpleasant voice rang out once again. "Where did you come from? Why did you invade the land of the immortal divine kingdom? Hand over the 8,000 immortal ancestral gods of my clan at once, or I'll definitely kill all of you today." As the hoarse voice rang out, millions of tiny, fragmented mental attacks smashed onto Wu Qi's divine sense like needles. Wu Qi felt a severe pain in his divine soul as the powerful and fierce mental attacks shattered the divine sense unleashed by his natal relic and smashed right onto it. Before the natal relic, which was formed hastily with a mystic art, could fully solidify, a few hair-thin cracks suddenly appeared on its purple-gold surface. Wu Qi gave a muffled snort as if his divine soul was struck by a thunderbolt, and at the same time, a large amount of sticky purple blood sprayed out from his 7 apertures. He stared in horror at the people of the immortal divine kingdom, who were shrouded in dark smoke. Clenching his teeth, he laughed strangely and said, "I see. No wonder you have such a powerful mental attack despite having such a weak cultivation base. You can actually hurt my divine soul." Following the mental attacks unleashed by these people, Wu Qi's divine sense found the source of their power. This mental attack, which was far beyond their actual cultivation base, came from the depths of the enormous celestial fiend's body. Inside the celestial fiend's body, countless naked human figures were wrapped in countless translucent membranes amidst the enormous blood vessels and meridians. These human figures were connected to the celestial fiend's body through umbilical cords, constantly extracting the inexhaustible life force from the celestial fiend's body to nourish themselves. These human figures had shriveled and small bodies, with only one head, which was extremely developed. Their heads occupied 2/3 of their bodies, and their huge heads were the size of water tanks. These huge heads were covered by a thin layer of transparent shell, and their enormous brains were squirming and wriggling at high speed. Each of these heads contained a mental power that was equivalent to the combined divine sense of 100 peak-stage heaven immortals. The souls of these human figures had been annihilated by someone using a mystic art, and what was left in the celestial fiend's body were these strange, lifeless bodies. Each of these bodies had a monstrous brain, and each of them possessed an enormous divine sense that was equivalent to 100 peak-stage heaven immortals. Using a mystic technique, these members of the deathless divine kingdom extracted the enormous mental energy from their bodies, compressed and released it with their own bodies, and turned it into a devastating mental attack that could attack the divine soul of a primordial immortal in the realm of Tao reasoning. Perhaps only a forbidden clan that had betrayed the human race could do such a cruel and inhumane thing. Wu Qi put away the damaged natal relic, unleashed the Vajramuni to protect everyone, and transmitted everything he had seen to Princess Zhonglu and the others through his divine sense. Everyone was taken aback, and even Ao Buzan, who was the most unruly of them all, could not help but show a hint of anger. There were more than 1 trillion bodies hiding in the membranes inside the enormous celestial fiend's body. How many sins had these people of the immortal divine nation committed? With a long roar, Ao Buzan thrust the soul-splitting spear into the void, unleashing an invisible force that swept across the surroundings. An invisible mental barrier emerged around the people of the immortal divine nation, which easily blocked the full-force attack unleashed by Ao Buzan with a chaotic spirit artifact. However, in Wu Qi's divine sense, at least tens of thousands of human figures in the membranes inside the celestial fiend's body had been blown to pieces. Surrounded by the undead army, Wu Chang suddenly cried out, "Are you the descendants of the Wu Chang clan?" "I am Wu Chang." Raising his 6 arms, Wu Chang roared, "I am Wu Chang, the leader of the Wu Chang clan." The hoarse, deep voice that was filled with endless evil sneered, "Wu Chang? A long, long time ago, he was the leader of my clan. But now, the immortal divine nation has nothing to do with the Wu Chang clan. You deserve to die for invading this place." All of a sudden, Wu Chang's 3 heads exploded, and a powerful mental attack struck him, causing his head to explode. Wu Chang's body wriggled, and his 3 heads regrew in the blink of an eye. But just as he was about to roar, another wave of mental attack landed on his head, and Wu Chang's head exploded again. Although his divine soul and physical body were immortal, in the face of the bizarre attacks from the people of the immortal divine nation, Wu Chang could only guarantee that he would not die, but could not guarantee that his body would be safe. Again and again, his head was reborn, and again, his head was smashed by the mental attack. Wu Chang and the people of the immortal divine nation fell into a strange cycle. When Wu Chang's head was smashed for the 100th time, Wu Qi waved his hand, and the Vajra Muni protected Wu Chang's body. At the same time, the heaven-refining cauldron emitted a beam of light, pulling Wu Chang's body into it, and imprisoned him together with the 6 great celestial emperors. The people of the immortal divine nation swarmed over from all directions, and at this moment, there were close to 3 million people surrounding Wu Qi and the others. Wu Qi's divine sense swept over the huge body of the fiend celestial. This was almost all the high-level people of the immortal divine nation. There were also close to 10 billion people on the fiend celestial's body, but they were all slaves of the immortal divine nation. The high-level people of the immortal divine nation were all gathered here. Nearly 3 million people had formed a formation that looked like some kind of strange cauldron, wrapping Wu Qi and the others tightly in it. Huge mental power flowed among them, turning into visible black translucent waves that lingered in the void. The huge mental power fluctuations shocked even Wu Qi. Perhaps the entire divine sense of a Tao integration stage mighty figure was no more than this, right? But how could the body of a mere fallen fiend celestial nourish such a huge mental power? There must be other secrets. The immortal divine nation alone could not have the power to nurture so many big-headed people in the egg membrane. What surprised Wu Qi the most was that, if the immortal divine nation had such strength, why had they been so unknown? They had been hiding in the void, unless they had been following Wu Chang's will and hiding here. But, judging from their attitude toward Wu Chang and the big-headed people they had nurtured, all signs indicated that the immortal divine nation was not the kind of existence that followed the rules. With a deep black curtain in front of him, the more Wu Qi thought about it, the more he felt that there was a big problem with the immortal divine nation. With a thought in his mind, the Kunwu swords hiding in the void around him split from 36,000 to 108,000, each corresponding to a law of heavenly Tao in the kaleidoscopic star core. They formed the fiend-slaying sword formation and sealed off the whole void. At the same time, he gave the 5 supreme treasures of primal he had looted from the 5 great celestial emperors to Princess Zhongli, Xia, Ao Buzan, Catfish, and Lord Xianxing, and asked them to quickly refine them, which would at least give them more power to protect themselves. Just as Wu Qi was doing all this, a hearty laugh came from near the broken head of the fiend celestial god. I was wondering who had come here by mistake. It turns out that the king of East Sea is here. Wu Qi, it seems fate has brought us together. A chariot pulled by 3 skeletal dragons rushed toward them, shrouded in black smoke and an evil aura. Near the chariot were 30,000 burly soldiers in heavy armor, who looked lifeless. There was no sign of life in these soldiers, and they were as inconspicuous as rocks. Even Wu Qi did not notice them when he scanned them with his divine sense just now. Now that they were in front of him, Wu Qi was shocked to find that the strength of their fleshly bodies was comparable to that of a peak-level gold immortal who had cultivated a body-tempering technique. Their armors and weapons were of excellent quality, comparable to superior-grade gold immortal artifacts. These 30,000 soldiers were so elite that they were not weaker than Yu's Yuxiong army. And the man sitting in the chariot was someone Wu Qi could never imagine, even in his wildest dreams. Chapter 1076. Lu Bang. The man sitting in the chariot, clad in a black dragon robe, a sky-reaching crown, and a pair of footwear, was emanating a murky, pale black light, giving off an extremely dangerous and bizarre feeling, was none other than Lu Bang. But he was definitely not Lu Bang, at least not the Lu Bang that Wu Qi was familiar with. The Lu Bang that Wu Qi was familiar with was greedy and lustful, cunning and slippery, ruthless and cautious, giving off the impression that he was a little wolf cub struggling to survive in the midst of countless ferocious beasts. The Lu Bang in front of him, on the other hand, was a grown-up wolf, and not an ordinary wild wolf, but a demon wolf with a pair of wings on his back that could soar into the sky. A mysterious aura lingered around him, and his face was as calm as still water. His eyes occasionally flickered with a dangerous gleam. Lu Bang's cultivation base had reached the realm of Tao breaking, and he was probably at the first tier of the realm. Compared with the Lu Bang that Wu Qi was familiar with, this one was like a divine dragon flying high in the sky, while the one Wu Qi was familiar with was a pile of cow dung on the ground. The difference was too great. There was only one man standing behind Lu Bang. He was 12 feet tall, and his body was as hard as an iron ingot. His whole body was covered with dark muscles, and an inch-thick Taotai heart-concealing armor covered his whole body. Only a big, dark, hairy face could be seen. Fan Kuai, the strongest fighter and most loyal bodyguard of Lu Bang, stared at Wu Qi with wide eyes as he clenched the one-handed tiger-headed crescent halberd in his hand. Unlike the Fan Kuai that Wu Qi knew on Pangu continent, who only had the cultivation base of a gold immortal at most, this one in front of him had the fleshly body and magic power of a Tao-breaking expert, a formidable figure who cultivated both fleshly body and magic power. Moreover, the aura emanating from his body was completely unlike that of a human. It clearly carried a strong aura of heavenly ghosts and demons. Wu Qi instinctively thought of the forbidden race's modification of the human body. The fact that Lu Bang could appear here with a member of the immortal divine nation, who was also a forbidden clan, meant that Fan Kuai's fleshly body must have been modified by the forbidden clan in various bizarre ways. It was only natural that he had the aura of heavenly ghosts and demons, and the speed at which heavenly ghosts and demons cultivated all kinds of evil divine abilities and magical arts was extremely fast, far surpassing that of orthodox Taoist and Buddhist cultivators. With Fan Kuai's aptitude, it was possible for him to have the cultivation base of Tao-breaking realm. On top of that, this fleshly body probably only retained Fan Kuai's image. Who knew what was going on with his original face and the soul in the fleshly body? Just by looking into Fan Kuai's eyes, Wu Qi felt a burning sensation on his cheeks. It was not an illusion, but a burning aura was really attacking Wu Qi's face. Wu Qi could not help but marvel at what kind of evil eye technique Fan Kuai had cultivated, as he could feel the same sensation even through the protective golden light of Vajramuni. Fan Kuai had provoked him in such a way, and Wu Qi was not a good-tempered man. He fully activated his primordial Dharma eyes, and the primordial purple energy transformed into Xian Bing energy and shot out. A cold gleam flashed across the void as Wu Qi's eyes and Fan Kuai's eyes collided head-on. A loud sizzling noise rang out, and suddenly, a plume of white smoke rose from Fan Kuai's fiery red eyes, while countless tiny ice crystals grew in them and drifted down the corners of his eyes. Fan Kuai gave a muffled snort and staggered back a step. His body swayed for a moment, and he almost fell to the ground. Grinning coldly, Wu Qi left Fan Kuai, cupped his fist at Lu Bang and said, "So, it's your Majesty, the King of Han. Aren't you receiving the abdication ceremony in Chang'an? Why do you have the time to come here? Don't tell me you don't care about the affairs of Great Wu at all?" The chariot stopped a full 100 miles away from Wu Qi. Hundreds of thousands of people of the divine kingdom of immortality and 30,000 heavily armored soldiers surrounded Lu Bang. A pitch-black, oddly shaped long streamer made from countless bones was hanging over Lu Bang's head, from which a dense evil energy was bursting out. The faint dark evil energy merged with the divine sense power gathered by the surrounding immortal kingdom's people and transformed into a huge, translucent skull that shrouded Lu Bang. This skull, which was formed from evil energy and divine sense, was densely covered with millions of runes. These tadpole-shaped runes were swimming and intertwining, forming a huge, three-dimensional array formation. This skull looked strange, but its defensive power must be extremely strong. With just a glance at it, Wu Qi knew that it was also a supreme artifact of primal, and it was the most sinister kind of supreme artifact of primal. Looking at Wu Qi from 100 miles away, Lu Bang suddenly grinned and said, "Wu Qi, tell me frankly why I'm here. Can't you guess why I'm here?" I might as well be frank with you. After spending so many years on Pangu continent, the only person I can't see through into you is you. Sighing and shaking his head, Lu Bang smiled and said, "What I've seen today has confirmed my hunch. Why would an ordinary person come to such a secret place? And it's really beyond my expectation that you could capture 6 great celestial emperors alive." Looking thoughtfully at Lu Bang, Wu Qi nodded slowly. It seemed that the king of Han, Lu Bang, who had an extremely weak cultivation base on Pangu continent, was just one of Lu Bang's clones. Wu Qi wondered how many clones Lu Bang had created. With his overall strength as a first-tier Dao-breaking expert, it was easy for him to create thousands of clones, but it was not so easy for each of them to achieve something. Even with Wu Qi's current strength, he had only created 2 clones, Supremacy of Great Yi and Supremacy of Shouzhua. Even if Lu Bang had divided his soul with the mystic art of the Forbidden Clans, he could not have too many clones, could he? So the question was, how many clones did Lu Bang have? 3 or 5? How strong were each of Lu Bang's clones? And each of them had the cultivation base of a Dao-breaking expert like the one in front of him? And each of them had a supreme artifact of primal? How could such a thing happen? After all, he was only the least favored son of the South Emperor. How could he have so many resources? After pondering for a long time, Wu Qi pointed at the huge body of the fiend god and said with a smile, "Did you build this immortal divine kingdom, Your Majesty?" Lu Bang nodded with a smile. Putting his hands under his sleeves, he said coolly, "I'm acquainted with Wu Xian, and I learned some secret history from him. It took me a long time to find this place before the 3 Eons successfully subdued these ancient clans and built the immortal divine kingdom." With a faint smile, Lu Bang bowed slightly and asked, "What do you think, King of East Sea? You've experienced the power of my people." After pondering for a moment and calculating with his fingers, Wu Qi said bluntly, "If weaker Dao-fusing experts, such as the Wahuang clan, are attacked by them, their divine souls will be severely injured. Even the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and 9 Dao patriarchs will be severely injured if they succeed in their sneak attack." Lu Bang sighed in a relaxed manner, then nodded and said with a smile, "That's good. The 3 eons of tribulation have not been in vain." Narrowing his eyes, Lu Bang gazed at Wu Qi for a while, then said in a deep voice, "I call myself the immortal divine emperor in this immortal divine kingdom. If the king of East Sea is willing to submit to me, after I succeed in my great undertaking, I'll definitely reward you handsomely, king of East Sea." Staring blankly at Lu Bang, Wu Qi smiled and asked, "What's your great undertaking, Your Majesty?" Lu Bang laughed heartily, nodded, and said, "There's nothing shameful about it. I'm just trying to do the same thing as those Dao-fusing experts. To be honest, I've been coveting the supreme power of this Pangu world, and I want to truly transcend the mortal world and become a saint with the supreme fortune of the humankind." Giving a mysterious smile to Wu Qi, Lu Bang narrowed his eyes and said, "It's the saint of the divine realm, not the saint of the Dao-fusing experts of our Pangu world." Speaking of this, Lu Bang couldn't help but show a fanatical smile. Judging by his excited look, it was as if he had already seen an infinitely bright future, right in front of his eyes, ready for him to pick. Wu Qi shook his head. "The saint of the divine realm? Hee, don't you know that the divine realm was completely destroyed by the world breakers as well? Even the most powerful ancient saints of the saints' world were reduced to nothingness along with the saints' world. However, there should be some other key to this. Since Lu Bang knew about the existence of the ancient sages, he must have known about the end of the ancient sages. What on earth did he and the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and 9 Dao patriarchs pursue to transcend the mortal world and become a saint? Perhaps it was necessary for him to pay a visit to the ancient sacred palace. Seeing Wu Qi remain silent, Lu Bang calmly sat in the chariot without saying a word. Fan Kuai rubbed his eyes, and the ice crystals in his eyes finally disappeared. Angrily, he gripped the pair of tiger-headed crescent halberds and stared at Wu Qi through clenched teeth, as if he would rush up and start a fight with Wu Qi at the slightest disagreement. Wu Qi paused for a long while Lu Bang could no longer hold back his temper. King of East Sea, you are a talent. I value talents the most. Submit to me, and with your cultivation and talent, you will be able to rule over a realm in the three realms of heaven, earth, and human." Looking at Lu Bang in surprise, Wu Qi shook his head, sighed, and said, "Only take over a world? I thought I could at least take over a world alone." Upon hearing Wu Qi's words, Fan Kuai burst out laughing, his voice full of sarcasm and ridicule. Lu Bang glared at him, shook his head, and said with a smile, "I have many confidants around me, and I need to make arrangements for all of them. If I succeed, they will all be rewarded. As someone who has just submitted to me, the King of East Sea can take over a world and have the authority of one of the celestial emperors. What are you dissatisfied with?" What was there to be dissatisfied with? There were many who were dissatisfied with it. Of Wu Qi's two incarnations, Lord Shouzhuo was appointed by Daozu to be the Violet Pole Great Celestial Emperor, and Supremacy Dei was appointed by Buddha to be the Lord of Mount Gridrakuta, ranking above countless Buddhist saints and only below the 7 Buddhist patriarchs. What Wu Qi had now was much better than what Lu Bang had offered, so he would be out of his mind if he chose to forge a bell instead of a bell. Shaking his head gently, Wu Qi was too lazy to talk nonsense with Lu Bang. He performed an incantation gesture with both hands, and the 108,000 Kunwu swords in the void immediately shone with dazzling sword lights. As the sword lights poured down, the formation formed by the 3 million people of the divine kingdom of Immortal shook violently. Chapter 1077. As far as the eye could see, sword beams as thin as hairs were falling from the sky. Each of them was sharp or as sticky as glue, and had a wisp of green-purple flame attached to them that could only be seen with the divine ability of the Dharma eyes. This was the power of the 108,000 laws of heavenly Tao in the fiend-slaying sword formation, which was strengthened by the kaleidoscopic star core. When the sword beams slashed on the barrier formed by the divine sense of the 3 million people of the divine kingdom of immortality, the translucent black spiritual ripples spread out in all directions. Each sword beam tore a crack hundreds of feet long on the thick barrier, and only faded away after penetrating tens of feet deep into the barrier. When the barrier was torn apart, the people of the divine kingdom of immortality let out shrill and long howls, and countless spiritual attacks shot toward Wu Qi and his companions like raindrops. Wu Qi snorted coldly. The reason he had wasted so much saliva on Lu Bang just now was to buy time to save Catfish and the others with a mystic art, whose divine souls had been injured. Now that most of their divine souls had recovered, it was no longer a problem for them to cast ordinary magic and divine abilities. So, Wu Qi immediately focused all his mind to control Vajramuni to unleash a bright divine light that enveloped the surroundings, and at the same time, he wielded the myriad ghost seal and struck the void. A black ripple visible to the naked eyes shot out of the seal, and amidst the shrill cries of thousands of ghosts, it smashed heavily on the spiritual barrier formed by the 3,000 people of the divine kingdom of immortality. Wherever the black ripple passed, the spiritual barrier shattered like a crystal struck by a heavy hammer. The 3,000 people of the divine kingdom of immortality stared in horror at the approaching black ripple. Before they could come up with any countermeasure, one ghost howl after another towered into the sky, and the heads of the 3,000 people exploded. Their souls shattered and scattered, and their bodies shriveled and withered, turning into dust that drifted in all directions. Ao Buzan and Lord Xiansheng applauded and praised in unison. The myriad ghost seal had killed 3,000 people of the divine kingdom of immortality with just one strike like a hot knife through butter. It was no wonder that it was an extraordinary artifact crafted from the fleshly body of the strongest great oracle of the ancient human race. This 10,000 ghost seal was extremely lethal to all spirit bodies, and it was also extremely destructive to mental barriers formed by mental power. This was truly a pleasant surprise. Lu Bang was shocked and was about to shout when Wu Qi raised his hand and struck out with the 10,000 ghost seal again. 9 black, square-shaped ripples swept across the void. Tens of thousands of people of the deathless divine kingdom were shattered by the 1,000 ghost seal, and died on the spot. Lu Bang's expression finally changed. He shouted, Wu Qi, you're courting death. Muffled sounds of collisions rang out incessantly as the mental attacks unleashed by the people of the deathless divine kingdom slammed into the divine light transformed from Vajramuni. Like a huge golden bell, the divine light that protected Wu Qi and others would sink into it from time to time, and the tremendous impact made Wu Qi lose his balance. The Vajramuni was trembling violently, and Wu Qi felt that his magic power was being consumed rapidly. Wu Qi's cultivation base was very high, but his magic power was relatively weak. He was not as strong as those Tao-breaking experts of the Buddhist League and Tao League, who had cultivated for countless eons, and had accumulated enough magic power. Now that his magic power had been consumed excessively, beads of cold sweat immediately broke out on Wu Qi's forehead. There was no shortcut in fighting head-on. Every bit of magic power he consumed was a bit. Even if Wu Qi could devour all the energy in the void and turn it into his own, he had to have enough energy in the outside world for him to devour. Now they were surrounded by the vast void. The people of the Deathless Divine Kingdom had formed a formation to trap Wu Qi, and Wu Qi's fiend-slaying sword formation had trapped the people of the Deathless Divine Kingdom. All the natural energy in the void had been drained by the formation, so how could Wu Qi get any replenishment? In desperation, when 30% of his magic power was consumed, Wu Qi suddenly snapped at the Vajramuni, "If you don't want your cultivation base destroyed, if you still want to see the light of day again, if you still want to go back to the Buddhist League and be worshipped by millions of believers, you'd better do as I say." Inside the Vajramuni, countless streams of enraged divine sense collided for a while, and then a calm divine sense came through the Vajramuni and made contact with Wu Qi. Overjoyed, Wu Qi clenched the 10,000 Ghosts seal in his right hand and grabbed the Vajramuni with his left hand. Then, he clasped the surface of the Vajramuni with his fingers and made 5 small holes in the inverse Vajra rotary formation inside the Vajramuni, drawing out the mighty power of the formation according to the positions of the 5 elements. Then, the sound of chanting rang out, and a 10,000 miles tall Vajra statue of the Buddhist League appeared over Wu Qi and his companions. The Vajra rotary formation, the strongest defensive formation in the world, composed of 6 revered ones, 36 ancient Buddhas, 36 Buddhas, and countless bodhisattvas, arhats, vajras, and heavenly kings, appeared around Wu Qi and his companions. The spiritual blasts unleashed by the 3 million people of the Deathless Divine Kingdom smashed into the formation and shattered into countless sparks visible to the naked eye, scattering in all directions. The Vajra rotary formation was as sturdy as a mountain and as powerful as the Vajramuni. No matter how many attacks were thrown at it, it remained unshaken. Liu Bang was dumbfounded at the sight of the formation. The Vajra rotary formation was the strongest defensive formation in the Buddhist League. With the protection of this formation, even if the 3 million people of the Deathless Divine Kingdom could borrow the spiritual power of the countless big-headed people in the body of the fallen fiend celestial god and possess a spiritual power that was close to that of a Tao integration stage mighty figure, what could they do to Wu Qi? After all, this formation was so sturdy that even the Buddhas himself couldn't break it. With his brows tightly furrowed, Liu Bang gritted his teeth and said, "Wu Qi, do you really want to go against me?" Wu Qi said coldly, "Liu Bang, cut the crap. You've worked so hard to subdue these ancient people and build this so-called Deathless Divine Kingdom. What you're plotting is no small matter. Today, I've discovered your secret. Are you going to let me go? If you can't recruit me, you're going to kill me. Am I wrong?" Liu Bang snorted coldly and nodded slowly. Wu Qi was right. They had broken into this place and discovered Liu Bang's secret. Therefore, he had to keep Wu Qi and the others here no matter what. If he couldn't recruit them for his own use, he had to kill them. The Deathless Divine Kingdom and Liu Bang's identity as the Deathless Divine Emperor were very shameful. He didn't want his secret to be known by the world just like this. After a moment of silence, Liu Bang slowly raised his right hand and waved it forward. A series of sharp and unpleasant dragon roars came from near the head of the fallen fiend celestial god. Large swathes of black clouds and evil aura gushed out from the huge wound on the head of the fiend celestial god. At least 100,000 skeletons, each 1,000 feet long and covered in green ghostly flames, dragged heavily armored knights toward them. Like the tens of thousands of guards around Liu Bang, these 100,000 knights did not have the slightest aura or vitality. They did not even have the evil aura of zombies. 100,000 skeletons Chi-Chi opened their mouths and shot out 100,000 green ghostly flames, each as thick as a water tank, which tore through the void and bombarded the golden light transformed from the Vajra rotary formation. The golden light remained motionless, while the 100,000 ghostly flames exploded into green flames that drifted in the air. Then, the 100,000 knights swung their swords at the same time. The void in front of them collapsed with a loud rumble, turning into a crack visible to the naked eye and slamming into the Vajra rotary formation. Finally, Wu Qi's body swayed. After all, he had only created a crude Vajra rotary formation with the sacred power of the Buddhist League in the Vajra Buddhist temple. It looked extraordinary, but in fact, its defensive power was only 30% of the original Vajra rotary formation. The joint attack of the 100,000 knights easily shattered the void, and its offensive power was at least equal to that of 30 peak-level Tao-breaking great overarching golden immortals. The blow instantly shattered the 5 holes Wu Qi had made on the Vajra Buddhist temple, and the Buddhist power reversed and backfired, almost knocking Wu Qi's fingers off the temple. "You're really something, Liu Bang." Wu Qi burst into laughter. His mind raced as he quickly performed an incantation gesture with both hands and pointed a finger at the sky. The fiend-slaying sword formation was operating at full power, and 6 huge stars with silvery gleams appeared in the void in the direction of the southern Dipper star. The 6 huge stars produced a dull rumble, and then 6 huge sword beams, each 100 miles thick, came whistling down from the sky and slammed heavily onto the 100,000 bone dragon knights. Liu Bang's face fell with horror. "Wu Qi, you ungrateful bastard! How dare you!" He cursed. When Liu Bang mingled in the mortal world, he often mingled in the streets. The filthy language he heard was endless, and it was truly a dazzling array of eye-catching words. When Liu Bang cursed Wu Qi did not take it seriously, but Princess Zhang and Yi Xia flew into a rage. It was just that Princess Zhang was born in the imperial family, so she was not good at swearing, and Yi Xia had only learned to speak human language a few days ago. How could she be Liu Bang's opponent? Immediately, the 5-colored divine ray behind Princess Zhang rolled wildly, then merged into a mass of chaotic energy and condensed into dozens of fist-sized thunderbolts that shot forward. Yi Xia, on the other hand, narrowed her eyes and suddenly let out a shrill shriek that almost ripped the eardrums of Wu Qi, Ao Buzan, and the others beside her. The 6 sword beams unleashed by Wu Qi struck heavily on the bodies of the 100,000 bone dragon cavaliers, sending countless pale dragon bones and dark armor fragments flying in all directions. At least 30,000 bone dragon cavaliers were smashed to pieces. Although these bone dragon cavaliers looked rather strange and the attacks they unleashed were incredibly powerful, their own defenses seemed to be extremely fragile. With just one strike, Wu Qi had destroyed 30% of them. The chaotic thunderbolts condensed by Princess Zhang came whistling over. Dozens of seemingly inconspicuous thunderbolts exploded, each of them wiping out the void within a radius of several miles. Over 20,000 bone dragon cavaliers were destroyed by the thunderbolts. Unlike Wu Qi's sword beams, which still left some dragon bone fragments and armor fragments, Princess Zhang Li's thunderbolts turned everything into nothingness, leaving nothing behind. However, Yi Xia's long cry was not aimed at those bone dragon cavaliers. Instead, it pierced straight into the ears of those people from the immortal divine kingdom through the thick spiritual energy shield. At least half of the 3 million people from the deathless divine kingdom were shaken. They howled out miserably as a faint 5-colored flame burst out from the center of their eyebrows, palms, and feet. The strange flame spread out quickly, burning them like human-shaped torches. From time to time, the sound of oil exploding could be heard from time to time. In just the time of 2 to 3 breaths, nearly 1,800,000 people from the immortal divine kingdom were burned into ashes. Yi Xia gave a weird smile, but a stream of blood sprayed out from her mouth. How could the ancestor of the invisible sky devils from outer space be underestimated? By consuming half of her spiritual force, Yi Xia launched a thunderous strike with the method of self-destruction. Indeed, she had severely wounded those people from the immortal divine kingdom under Lu Bang's command. Speaking of playing with souls and spirits, the invisible sky devils from outer space were the best in this field, and no one could ever be better than them. Lu Bang was so angry that he leaped up from the chariot, waving his arms and legs as if he was dancing. These were all his most precious treasures. These people from the immortal divine kingdom, these bone dragon cavaliers, were all gone. How could he replace them? Lu Bang's eyes turned red. Forgetting about the consequences, he sprayed a mouthful of blood onto the oddly shaped, dark, bone streamer floating above his head, then fiercely waved it towards Wu Qi and the others. A cold gust of wind rose from the ground, and the golden light released from Vajramuni dimmed and shattered instantly. Chapter 1078. Wu Qi was struck dumb. The Vajramuni, an important treasure of the Buddhist League and the core of the Vajra revolving formation, could not withstand a single strike from Lu Bang's strange flag. Not only did the Vajramuni's light dimmed, but Wu Qi also felt an evil cold air coming from his palm, rushing straight into his internal organs through the Vajramuni. He felt a sharp pain in his palm, which was the frostbite on his skin. Wu Qi's palms were pale and blue from the cold, and wisps of dark green mist that could be seen with naked eyes were rising from them. His bones and flesh had turned translucent, as if they had been frozen into ice cubes. Fortunately, the evil cold air had not exceeded the limit of Wu Qi's divine power. He exercised the scroll of stealing quietly, melting the cold air bit by bit and turning it into primal purple airflow that circulated through his body. The evil energy was extremely pure, and each wisp of it contained a very strong power. He had no idea what the origin of the flag was, and why it could unleash such an incredible attack. Taking a deep breath, Wu Qi exercised the power of the Vajramuni. A strong Buddhist light rushed out from the flag, while the 6 revered ones, 36 ancient Buddhas, 36 Buddhas, and even those bodhisattvas and arhats were chanting mantras at the same time, pushing the power of the Vajramuni to the maximum. The warm and masculine Buddhist light shone in all directions, and the cold air that rushed into Wu Qi's body gradually dissipated, turning into Wu Qi's own magic power. Seeing that his attack was ineffective, Lu Bang coughed out 7 mouthfuls of blood and waved the flag 7 times. On the flag, which was about 1 mile wide and 13 miles long, countless fist-sized, grotesque skulls began to sway at the same time, letting out ferocious howls as their eyes fixed on Wu Qi at the same time. Even through the thick Buddhist light, Wu Qi still felt as if his 7 apertures were locked by countless invisible evil forces. Yi Xia snorted coldly. She pressed one hand on Wu Qi's back, and a stream of 5-colored blood flowed out from her fingertip, quickly drawing countless runes and talismans on Wu Qi's back. The strange runes and talismans glowed with an evil aura as they flew into Wu Qi's body. The invisible forces that had locked Wu Qi's 7 apertures suddenly disappeared, and Lu Bang unleashed a thunderfire from his palm and smashed it onto the flag. The flag shook violently, and the countless skulls on it howled in pain, while a great evil force enveloped the surroundings. Hundreds of thousands of citizens of the immortal divine kingdom let out miserable howls as green fireflies flew out of their 7 apertures into the long banners and were devoured by those skulls. Vomiting blood out of his mouth, Lu Bang cursed furiously. He stared at Wu Qi in both shock and fear, wondering what kind of evil magic Wu Qi had used to break his flag. It was indeed an evil magic. Yi Xia was a fiend ancestor, who held the highest position among all the invisible sky devils in outer domains. With a secret magic, the evil force that Lu Bang used to seal Wu Qi's 7 apertures and suppress his divine soul was transferred to the bodies of those people of the divine kingdom of immortal by Yi Xia. How could the cultivation of those people be compared with Wu Qi? If the entire flag struck Wu Qi, perhaps Wu Qi's divine soul would be severely wounded, but the souls of those hundreds of thousands of people of the divine kingdom of immortal would be torn out of their bodies, and their lives would be devoured by the flag. Not only their souls flew out from their 7 apertures, but before long, the corpses of the people of the divine kingdom of immortal flew up into the air as well, then were torn into pieces by the countless skulls on the flag and swallowed. Blood splashed everywhere on the flag, and minced meat poured down like a rainstorm. It was an extremely cruel scene. Princess Zhonglu snorted coldly. The 5-colored divine light transformed into 5 beams of light and swept out, fiercely bumping on the spiritual energy shield that covered the bodies of those people of the divine kingdom of immortal. She flicked her fingers, and within a blink of an eye, thousands of spell symbols darted out from her fingertips. Like the most brilliant clay sculptor, she squeezed the extremely strong spiritual energy that was rolled up by the 5-colored divine light into tens of water tank-sized, translucent thunderbolts. Lu Bang's expression flickered. With a wave of the streamer over his head, a stream of evil energy poured down like a waterfall, sucking the dozens of thunderballs condensed from psychic power into the evil energy and sending them thousands of miles away in the blink of an eye. Along with a few barely audible popping noises, those thunderballs exploded. Lu Bang's body slightly quivered, and 2 streams of blood suddenly flowed down from his nose. After all, these people of the divine kingdom of immortal had manipulated the spiritual energy of those big-headed people for their own use, and their control over all kinds of spiritual energy and souls had reached a perfect level. After all, these people of the divine kingdom of immortal had manipulated the spiritual energy of those big-headed people for their own use, and their control over all kinds of spiritual energy and souls had reached a perfect level. Meanwhile, Princess Zhongli had inherited the spiritual energy of ghosts from the ancient Tao of divinity, and could be considered as a master in this field. Once they struck with their full strength, how could Lu Bang not suffer? Even though Lu Bang's oddly shaped flag was a supreme artifact of primal level, and the most powerful and effective one, it could not escape from the category of spiritual energy, soul, and spiritual energy. Therefore, it naturally fell into the control of Yi Xia and Princess Zhonglu. His attacks had failed several times, and instead he had caused his men to suffer heavy losses. So angry that he wished he could fight Wu Qi to the death, he threw his head back and let out a few long roars into the sky. The torrent of air that spewed out of his mouth sent 2 streams of blood shooting hundreds of feet into the air. Standing next to him, Fan Kuai's face turned cold and gloomy. The subject must die if his master is insulted. Do you dare to fight me to the death, Wu Qi, you punk? Holding 2 tiger-headed crescent halberds, Fan Kuai transformed into a black whirlwind and sped toward Wu Qi. Turning a blind eye to the dazzling golden light unleashed by the Vajramuni, he swung his halberds and hacked them down at Wu Qi. Ao Buzan grinned hideously. With a sway of his body grew to 30 feet tall, and a series of cracking noises rang out from under his skin as countless black dragon scales the size of a palm emerged layer by layer. Throwing his head back and roaring, Ao Buzan, who had transformed into a dragon man, rushed out of the Vajramuni's protective circle and went head-on to meet Fan Kuai. With a sway of his body, Ao Buzan's left and right shoulders were hit by Fan Kuai's 2 tiger-headed crescent halberds. The dragon scales on his shoulders shattered, and the halberds went half a foot deep into his flesh. If it were an ordinary person, this injury would be enough to make him lose the ability to fight, but Ao Buzan was the Zhu Long of the Chaos World, one of the most ferocious fiends in the Chaos World. The severe pain in his shoulders made Ao Buzan's lower body suddenly stand up straight like a spear. Eyes gleaming with a violent killing intent, he leaped up and kicked Fan Kuai in the lower abdomen while laughing strangely. A cracking sound rang out as 5 sharp dragon claws, each about 3 feet long, shot out from Ao Buzan's toes and pierced Fan Kuai's body like 5 swords. Fan Kuai roared in pain. He tried to pull the halberds out of his body, but the muscles around the wound on Ao Buzan's shoulders were growing crazily, wrapping the halberds in Ao Buzan's purple-golden muscles. No matter how hard he tried, he could not pull them out. Fan Kuai roared furiously. He threw down the 2 tiger-headed crescent halberds and was about to reach out his hand to wrap around Ao Buzan's head. He had great confidence in his infinite divine power, and he was confident that he could break Ao Buzan's neck and kill him. But Ao Buzan was not fighting alone. The group of villains around Wu Qi definitely did not know what a fair duel was. Before Fan Kuai could stretch out his arms, which were as strong as iron poles, a gust of wind came blowing over his head. In the next moment, a large iron hammer, gleaming with the dark yellow luster unique to an item of virtue and emanating a fierce pressure, smashed whistling through the air and smashed the top of his head. Rather than calling it a hammer, it would be more accurate to call it a square-shaped mountain. It was a lump of metal that was nearly 1,000 cubic feet in size. The face of the hammer measured 80 feet in both length and width, and its head was 180 feet in height. Its body was cast with a pitch-black star alloy from outer domains, and its handle, which was nearly 1,000 feet long and as thick as the beam of a small house, was held tightly in the little Lolita's hand. The petite catfish flood dragon was spitting white saliva from her mouth, her eyes gleaming with the flames of greed as she waved the hammer like a windmill and smashed it 380 times on the top of Fan Kuai's head in just a flash. It was the largest and heaviest of all the items of virtue Wu Qi had ever crafted. It was made of the heavy metal from the core of a star found in the chaotic world, which made it extremely heavy and strong. Coupled with Wu Qi's amazing crafting skills, this big guy, which Catfish Flood Dragon named Black Dragon Hammer, was truly a ferocious killing weapon. Amidst Lu Bang's furious roar, the Black Dragon Hammer made Fan Kuai bleed from his 7 orifices, and the top of his head was smashed like tofu. Fan Kuai, who had reached out his hand to strangle Ao Buzan, howled in pain as he struggled to block Catfish's crazy attack. But he felt a sharp pain in both his hands and feet at the same time. Gold Horn, Silver Horn, and Gold Feather, who had transformed into their true forms of dragon pythons of fire and ice, shot out 4 streams of golden and silver light at the same time, piercing through Fan Kuai's hands and feet and destroying the most important meridians and joints in his arms and thighs. Lu Bang cursed like a street thug, going straight for the private parts of Wu Qi's 18 generations of ancestors. Enraged and ashamed, Lu Bang pulled out a small black dagger and stabbed it into his own heart. A purple and sticky beam of blood-red light darted out of Lu Bang's heart. 18 spirit true blood, which was the most important thing for a cultivator and could only be condensed with a great deal of hard work, shot out from his heart. 18 drops of true blood shot out and fell into the forehead of the huge fallen fiend god in a flash. Fan Kuai's miserable howl kept ringing out. Lord Xianxing was not a fair and just man, but a demon king who ruled myriad immortals' planet's Longyuan River in his bones. While Fan Kuai was badly beaten by the crowd, Lord Xianxing let out a strange laugh. The illusion-breaking halberd turned into countless beams of cold light and shot out from all over Fan Kuai's body, tearing through his well-tempered body with ease. In the face of the halberd, which could even pierce through the void, Fan Kuai's body was defenseless like tofu. Finally, he let out a despairing howl and cried out, "Your Majesty, save me! Save me!" With a gloomy face, Lu Bang pointed a finger at the long banner over his head. Immediately, more than 30% of the little skulls on the huge banner exploded at the same time, sending out countless wisps of black smoke and evil energy to condense into a huge palm that grabbed toward Fan Kuai. The crowd who were besieging Fan Kuai felt a chill run through their bodies, as if their blood was about to freeze. They hastily retreated to the protection of the strong golden light emanating from the Vajramuni in Wu Qi's palm. Fan Kuai was grabbed back by Lu Bang, and Lu Bang roared furiously, "All of you will die here today. I don't care about the army of the undead. Let the army of the undead be buried with you. All of you die." A violent and chaotic divine sense emanated from the fiend god's body. Accompanied by a deafening roar, a 10,000 miles tall fiend god that looked exactly the same as the fallen fiend god, but much smaller in size, flew out of the fiend god's body. In a flash, it transformed into a black bolt of lightning and smashed toward Wu Qi and his companions. Lu Bang murmured to himself in a low voice, "Give it a try. This is the heavenly bull that I've spent so much effort to make." Chapter 1079. Wu Qi and the others stared blankly at the gigantic fiend god. He looked exactly the same as the fallen fiend god, and anyone could guess that he was somehow related to the fiend god. The aura emanating from his body was not inferior to any mighty figure at the pinnacle of the Tao integration pinnacle stage. In particular, his aura was so peculiar that the space enshrouded by his aura became as viscous as glue, and time abruptly slowed down by several times. This was clearly an extremely powerful innate ability. The fiend god only glanced at Wu Qi and the others from a distance. Wu Qi and the others who were Tao-breaking experts were fine, but Catfish, Lord Xianxing, and the others who were Tao reasoning experts were shocked. Chi-Chi's body swayed, and his soul was almost sucked out of his body by the fiend god's bizarre gaze. The heaven-refining cauldron shook, and a beam of green light flew out, sucking the 8,000 undead soldiers into it. The 6 huge stars in the sky, arranged according to the 6 stars of the Southern Dipper, shook, and then 6 monstrous sword beams came whistling down, hacking right on the fiend god's head that was shaped like a longhorn bull. A blinding light burst out of the huge insect's head. The sword beams hacked down by the fiend-slaying sword formation according to the 108,000 laws of heavenly Tao in the kaleidoscopic star core, and with the power of the infinite stars fell on the fiend god's head, but could not hurt him at all. Liu Bang could not help but burst into laughter when he saw that the fiend-slaying sword formation did not hurt the fiend god at all. He nodded repeatedly and said, "Wonderful! This is the art of rebirth passed down by the chaos fiend god. Combined with the mystic arts of the forbidden clans, it is indeed unpredictable and has the power to destroy the universe. Wu Qi, you little punk, you've hurt the army of the immortal divine kingdom today, and you'll all die here." Rolling his eyes, Liu Bang grinned at Princess Zhonglu and Yixia and said, "You two are so beautiful, so why are you following a bastard like Wu Qi? If I can unify the 3 realms in the future, I will appoint 9 empresses according to the position of the 9 palaces. I cannot count on the 2 empresses of the middle palace, but there is great hope for the other 8 empresses." While Liu Bang was bragging proudly, Princess Zhonglu and Yixia spat at the same time. Yixia made some gestures with her hands, sketching out a series of black, twisting runes that looked like earthworms. As Yixia's fingers continued to draw, streams of evil energy gradually spread out. Countless extremely thin, hair-like, 5-colored light patterns appeared around Yixia's body. Wu Qi watched Yixia's every move with rapt attention. Yixia's divine abilities and mystic techniques all came from the chaos, and some of them were so profound that even Wu Qi was far inferior to her. These 5-colored light patterns were so thin that they looked like they could be sprayed out at any time, but they gave off an extremely dangerous feeling. The huge celestial fiend slowly approached Wu Qi and his companions. His body did not seem to be very agile, and his muscles had not even stretched out yet. His movements were extremely stiff, like an old zombie that had been lying in a coffin for years without seeing the light of day. His every move was very dull. Another 6 rays of sword light fell from the sky. Although they couldn't destroy his body, they greatly hindered his movements. He was already immobile to begin with, but now he was crawling like a snail toward Wu Qi and his companions. Liu Bang frowned. Ignoring Wu Qi and his companions, he just turned to Fan Kuai, who had just been rescued and was now applying ointment on his wounds with clenched teeth, and said, "They still haven't fully matured yet. It seems I'm still lacking. I can't let them leave this place alive today. Otherwise, if they tell the whole world what happened here, I'm afraid I'll be in big trouble." The ointment used by Fan Kuai was green like paste, but it was very effective. As soon as he applied it on his wounds, the wounds inflicted by Ao Buzan and his companions began to heal and scab over in just a few breaths of time. He gently exercised his arms and said in a cold voice, "Don't worry, Your Majesty, they can't leave this place alive. I'll be very careful this time and won't let them besiege us again." Liu Bang nodded slowly. He turned to look at Wu Qi and said with a frown, "How can they be so shameless? Their method of besieging us is even more despicable than me. Tiske, there's actually such a wonderful man in the world? If he doesn't die today, he will be a good opponent for me." While the two of them were chatting happily, Yixia waved her little hand, sending out countless tiny threads of five-colored light that shot towards the approaching celestial fiend. The five-colored light threads wrapped around the celestial fiend, ignoring the chilly wind and evil energy that howled and roared around his body, and more than 90% of them sank into the celestial fiend's head. Suddenly, Lu Bang's body trembled, and blood dripped from his 7 apertures. He stared at Xia with shock and anger, then snapped, "Little girl, what a vicious trick! You can actually attack the Longhorn Bull's soul through the Grand Mist's supreme treasure, the myriad soul white bone bead? Bastard!" Xia's body swayed slightly, and 2 streams of 5-colored blood sprayed out from her straight nose. She shouted in a hoarse voice, "What a powerful celestial fiend! Not to mention the others, there's actually a pearl in his spiritual sea that's filled with evil energy protecting his soul." Xia tried her best, but she could only injure it. As for Lu Bang, he left a trace of his soul imprint in the celestial fiend's soul, and Xia only attacked it once, but failed to destroy it. Wu Qi pressed his palm on the top of Xia's head, injecting his own essence into Xia's body. Today, Xia had used 2 powerful secret techniques in a row, and her essence, qi, and spirit had been greatly depleted. If it weren't for Wu Qi replenishing her with his own essence, it would have been a great harm to her in the future, and also to the fetus in her womb. Not only was Xia pregnant, but so was Princess Zhongli. Wu Qi dared not to let them use too much strength, in case they hurt the babies in their wombs. Every single move made by Wu Qi and the other powerful beings in Pangu World was in accordance with the Great Tao of Pangu World, and the babies in the wombs of Princess Zhongli and Xia couldn't be born simply by speeding up the time. These babies had to be born naturally in the time of the Great Tao of Pangu World for a long time. This meant, even though Wu Qi made the time around Xia and Princess Zhongli go back to 1,000,000,000 years instantly with a secret magic, only 3 to 5 days had passed in the outside world. Therefore, the babies in their wombs had only been growing for 3 to 5 days. The babies were still in their wombs, but Xia risked her own spirit blood to fight against the enemies. This made Wu Qi sad and worried. Therefore, he could only try his best to compensate Xia with his own spirit blood. While sending his own essence power out, Wu Qi looked at this enormous devil god worriedly. The divine kingdom of the deathless, Lu Bang. Everything in this place was evil, which made Wu Qi feel uneasy. Wu Qi reckoned that if he gave it his all, he had a 60% chance of destroying Lu Bang's soul, and if all Lu Bang had shown was just the trump card he had shown. But if Lu Bang was hiding something else, if Wu Qi failed to kill Lu Bang with this strike, he would offend Lu Bang for no reason. Wu Qi wasn't afraid of Lu Bang alone, but Lu Bang had so many followers. Ordinary soldiers and civilians in the East Sea all lived in the small world inside Wu Qi's body. As long as Wu Qi didn't die, they wouldn't be harmed. But Wu Qi had brought so many ministers and warriors out of the East Sea, and so many immortals and spirit creatures who followed him. They couldn't just hide in the small world and never see the light of day, could they? But they were no match for Lu Bang. Before Ao Buzan recovered all the strength he had in his previous life, he was no match for this devil. Wu Qi had revealed his whereabouts today. If he really offended Lu Bang, when Lu Bang escaped and returned with his people to take revenge, how many people around Wu Qi would be killed or injured? After hesitating for a moment, Wu Qi patted the heaven-refining cauldron on his head, and a clear light rolled the South Emperor out. Wu Qi grabbed the South Emperor's neck, looked at Lu Bang and shouted, "Lu Bang, the South Emperor is here. Let's forget about what happened today, and I'll return the South Emperor to you. What do you think?" The South Emperor looked in shock at Lu Bang, who was sitting in the chariot in the distance. He did look like Lu Bang, but his aura, his temperament, and his arrogant, domineering, and majestic aura were not the child he was familiar with. Especially his aura, which was the aura of an upper-grade Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal. He was only at the peak of Primordial Unity Golden Immortal, so how could Lu Bang have the cultivation of a Zenith Heaven Golden Immortal? And what was that huge streamer over Lu Bang's head? Why did the evil Qi make the South Emperor tremble with fear? In particular, the demon god hovering in midair was approaching. He looked so similar to the fallen demon god in the distance. The aura he gave off made the South Emperor's muscles tense up. Even his spiritual soul trembled involuntarily, like a rabbit that had seen its natural enemy. Judging from the situation, the devil seemed to be controlled by Liu Bang as well. What was going on? Just as the South Emperor was puzzled, Liu Bang suddenly burst into laughter. He laughed so hard that he rocked back and forth. Shaking his head, he sighed and said, "Wu Qi, are you out of your mind? Do you know the story of getting a share? He is just a father. Do I care about his life or death? It's up to you whether you want to chop this South Emperor or stew him. If you're willing, you can give me his skull. I can use it to make a wine vessel." The South Emperor's lips turned blue with anger. He stared at Liu Bang and snapped, "Unfilial son, how can you be so heartless?" Liu Bang twitched his lips and sneered, "Heartless? Unfilial son? Bah, Lao Tzu has been reincarnated countless times in the mortal world, and his father has changed countless times. It is your good fortune that he is willing to call you father. What else do you want?" Spitting a mouthful of saliva thousands of feet away, Liu Bang put on a hooligan posture, rolled up his sleeves, and shouted at the South Emperor, "South Emperor, Lao Tzu doesn't care about your life or death. Why don't you bite Lao Tzu's bird? Motherfucker, I only played with you, a palace maid, and you forced me to reincarnate in the mortal world to be a tool for you to control the mortal world. I didn't treat you as my father then." Tilting his lips and tilting his head, Liu Bang sneered, "After reincarnating so many times, I don't even know how many fathers Lao Tzu has had. Who the hell cares about you?" Fan Kuai grinned. The South Emperor was so angry that his eyes rolled back, and he almost fainted. When Wu Qi heard Liu Bang's wonderful speech, he heaved a long sigh and threw the South Emperor into the heaven-refining cauldron. Then, the cauldron sucked all the people around it into the cauldron, while Wu Qi himself transformed into a stream of light and sped away into the distance. In just a flash, Liu Bang could no longer find any trace of Wu Qi in his sight and divine sense. Liu Bang, who was cursing with his sleeves rolled up, was stunned. He looked back at Fan Kuai in horror, but the latter also looked confused. God? A ghost? How can he appear and disappear so mysteriously? Subconsciously, Liu Bang touched his arm, which was covered with goosebumps. He was stunned by Wu Qi's amazing escape technique. Chapter 1080. Liu Bang, Liu Bang. Wu Qi returned to Pangu continent while wringing his wrists and sighing in admiration along the way. Now that he was here, he was not afraid that Liu Bang would have the guts to catch up with him. The most important thing for him to do was to keep a secret. If he dared to show up on Pangu continent with an artificially made fiend celestial, those Dao-fusing experts who were constantly paying attention to all the movements on Pangu continent with their divine sense would tear him apart. Princess Zhonglu and the others had returned to the top secret place in the outer heavenly realm, where they continued to slaughter fiend celestials to accumulate virtues to refine the items of virtue. More than 10,000 items of virtue had been refined by now, and there was still a small number of the most powerful ones that had not received enough virtues. They would be completed in about half a year. The place was extremely well hidden. With the Wahuang clan covering their tracks, the various formations Wu Qi had constructed, and the Mirror of Kunlun, an extraordinary artifact that could hide all the energy fluctuations, Wu Qi was not worried that someone could find it. Princess Zhonglu and the others were absolutely safe. Riding on nine tails and flying aimlessly over Pangu continent, Wu Qi was like a headless fly, not knowing where to go. Going to Diyu? It did not make much sense. At this point, would Wu Qi still go to Diyu and be a loyal subject? Even if he dared to say that, Ying Zheng and the others had to be willing to believe him. Ever since he came to Pangu continent, Wu Qi had behaved like a warlord who intended to set up a separatist regime. If he was willing to join Diyu, perhaps even Emperor Haozuan would not dare to use him. Now, his relationship with Diyu could only be said to be that of friends, or that he had a good personal relationship with some people in Diyu. As for other places, the Ling dynasty and the Shizo dynasty had been destroyed, so he didn't have the chance to become a state preceptor even if he wanted to. His clones were stirring up trouble in both New Wu and Great Wu, so there was no need for him to intervene. As for the celestial court, Wu Qi looked up at the sky. The 6 great celestial emperors of the celestial court were still imprisoned by him in the heaven-refining cauldron. If he went to the celestial court now, forget it. People like him who joined the celestial court halfway wouldn't be put in an important position. Why bother coming? After thinking for a long time, he could not think of what he, the true self, should do. So, he could only ride on the 9-tailed carapace in boredom, flying feebly over great rivers and mountains. While flying, Wu Qi had sensed a few faintly discernible divine wills, which had almost fused with the true form of the heavenly Tao, sweeping across his body. Wu Qi knew in his heart that those words were coming. Before long, he saw a spot of golden light in front of him, and a faint scent of sandalwood wafted toward him. Clad in a kasaya of 7 treasures, with a Buddhist crown made of various pearls on his head, and his wrists, neck, waist, and feet glittering with light, Supremacy, who was wearing dozens of rare Buddhist treasures, was flying toward him on a cloud like a nouveau riche. Dozens of miles away, Supremacy cried out in a booming voice as if he had never seen Wu Qi before, "Are you Wu Qi, fellow Taoist? Please stop your cloud steps." He slapped the 9-tailed carapace hard on its head, causing it to spit out a mouthful of saliva and slow to a stop. Its 9 tails waved rapidly in the air, creating countless ghostly shadows that locked onto Supremacy. Wu Qi sat lazily on the 9-tailed carapace, cupped his fist and bowed to Supremacy. "Supremacy, Supremacy? Heh, I've heard so much about you. You've been in the limelight these days." Supremacy ignored the covetous 9-tailed carapace, and slowly flew to within 1,000 feet of Wu Qi. He cupped his fist and bowed to Wu Qi. "Fellow Taoist Wu Qi, it's my pleasure to meet you. Let's cut the crap and ask fellow Taoists to return the Vajramuni and my fellow Buddhist brothers." Wu Qi looked at Supremacy with great astonishment, shook his head and said, "Monk, are you crazy or stupid? Although you've become famous recently, Wu Qi is not a nobody. Although the East Sea has been handed over to you, Wu Qi still has millions of soldiers and countless good generals under his command. You're asking Wu Qi to return the Vajramuni to you just like that? That's easy for you to say." Supremacy rolled his eyes and snorted coldly, waved his right palm and pressed it down on Wu Qi's heart. Supremacy used all his strength in this palm strike. A vigorous Buddhist light condensed into a lifelike golden lotus in the center of his palm. On the lotus's stamen sat a thumb-sized, white, and translucent Buddha Dharma idol. The tiny Dharma idol emitted a suffocating wave of Dharma power. Wu Qi's expression turned serious. He took a deep breath, sucking in all the air and clouds around him. It was not just the air and clouds, even the light, space, time, and other objective existences were sucked into Wu Qi's body. Even all the mountains that were over 10,000 feet tall vanished into thin air. They were all sucked into Wu Qi's body. Everything was converted into the surging primordial violet aura. Wu Qi looked at Supremacy's golden palm that was slowly coming down at his chest, then slowly pushed his palm up to meet it. Wu Qi's right palm turned translucent like it was carved out of crystal, and a faint purple aura could be vaguely seen on the edge of his palm. The center of his palm was dented, looking soft like a ball of cotton, devoid of any strength. Supremacy's palm was a golden lotus that protected a small Buddha figure. It was firm and strong, filled with the supreme power of the Buddhist sect. Wu Qi's palm force, on the other hand, was fleeting and weak. A strand of purple aura gradually appeared in his palm, forming an extremely simple Taiji Pisces diagram. The yin-yang Pisces rotated slowly, bringing with it a mysterious rhythm that could not be explained to others. It floated gently toward Supremacy's Buddha palm. On the great spirit vulture mountain, a few Buddhist ancestors praised in unison. Supremacy's palm strike had truly displayed the mighty, masculine power of the Buddhist sect to the fullest. In the primordial Tao Palace, the 9 Daozu exclaimed in unison. Wu Qi did not come from a proper Tao sect, but his palm strike had displayed the charm of Tao sect almost perfectly. Supremacy was firm and fierce, while Wu Qi was soft and ethereal. One hard and one gentle, they displayed almost all the secrets of Tao sect and Buddhist sect below the Tao fusing realm in front of everyone. It looked simple as the two of them slapping each other's palms like street thugs, but it contained endless mysteries. Those below the Tao breaking realm could not even see what was so mysterious about their attack. However, in the eyes of the mighty figures above the Tao breaking realm of Tao sect and Buddhist sect, Wu Qi's ethereal and gentle palm strike had already annihilated everything, turning everything into chaos. Within the chaos, there was the yin and yang of Taiji. This was the highest realm of Tao sect's mystic arts. Supremacy's palm strike, on the other hand, was clean and neat. It was firm and fierce, without the slightest hesitation. It was naked like a newborn baby, hot like the sun rising from the east. It simply cut through all obstacles with its supreme power, returning the universe to a blue sky and white clouds. Wu Qi's palm strike returned everything to chaos, filled with a deathly stillness and reincarnation intent. Supremacy's palm strike contained infinite vitality with the power of destruction, opening up a brand new world within the deathly stillness. The entanglement of life and death, the reincarnation of life and death, were two opposite extremes. Under the nervous gazes of countless mighty figures, the two's right palms collided lightly. The yin-yang twin fish of Taiji in Wu Qi's palm disintegrated, and the lotus Buddha statue in Supremacy's palm was annihilated. Two strange lights, one gold and one purple, shot out at the same time. After clashing for a while, they strangely fused into one. Wu Qi's and Supremacy's palms suddenly separated, and a space of about 30 feet appeared between them. In the 30-foot round void, boundless splendor suddenly burst forth, and a beautiful world appeared between their palms. The world was undergoing an earth-shattering process of creation. Countless flowers, plants, and trees grew one after another, followed by the appearance of birds and beasts. Soon after, all kinds of human-like creatures were born naturally. Although the primordial immortals and Buddhas of the realm of Tao reasoning were still puzzled by such a marvelous scene, the intensity of the divine sense that was paying close attention to this side in the void had suddenly increased by thousands of times, and a few of them could not wait to spread toward the light ball. Wu Qi and Supremacy had exerted all their strength, but their attacks were of completely different natures. In the 30-foot round void, a scene similar to the creation of heaven and earth by the great Saint Pangu was played out. In one breath, Wu Qi sucked in everything within 1,000,000 miles, and then the tremendous power of the two collided with each other, creating a small world in the chaos. It was the first time even for the Tao fusing experts to see such a mysterious thing. If those Tao fusing experts were to go to the chaotic world, they would also be qualified to create their own world. But unlike the great Saint Pangu, who disintegrated his own body to create a world, they did not have the miraculous effect of constantly absorbing chaotic spiritual energy to strengthen themselves like the Pangu world. If they could not gradually strengthen themselves, then what was the difference between them and the interstitial world or the Buddhist kingdom in the palm of their hands? Therefore, although they understood some of the principles of the creation of heaven and earth, no one had really tried it. The full-force attack of Wu Qi and Great E Supremacy had perfectly played out the scene similar to the creation of the world by the great Saint Pangu. It was a small world about 30 feet in size, but it was filled with the essence of the heavenly Tao of an entire world. If they could obtain some benefits from it, it would be extremely beneficial even for those Tao fusing experts. However, just as the divine senses approached the 30-foot small world, Wu Qi and Supremacy exchanged a glance. Then, with great tacit understanding, they clenched their palms and sucked. The 30-foot small world split into two and obediently entered their bodies. All the secrets were shared by them, and no one else could take advantage of it. A simple attack was so earth-shattering. Wu Qi and Supremacy bowed to each other hypocritically, putting on a disgusting expression of heroes appreciating each other. Supremacy put his palms together and bowed to Wu Qi. Fellow Taoist, this humble monk is ashamed. Wu Qi also bowed to Supremacy. You flatter me, you flatter me. In the Buddhist sect, apart from the 7 Buddhist patriarchs, you are the most powerful. That may be the case, but a favor is a favor, and a business is a business. Do you understand, Master? As he bowed with a smile, Wu Qi took out the diamond muni and played with it in his palm smugly. Supremacy put his palms together and looked up at the sky, vaguely having the realization of a martyr. Wu Qi smiled brightly. Holding the diamond muni with both hands, he almost drooled. How ruthless must this slash be? Look at Supremacy Yi's size. Why is he a fat sheep? Chapter 1081. 9 divine wills hovered in the void, as hot as the sun as they circled around Wu Qi and Supremacy with undisguised curiosity. Even an idiot could tell that they were the divine wills of the 9 Daozu. They knew that Wu Qi had the lives of 6 revered Buddhas, 36 ancient Buddhas, 36 Buddhas, countless bodhisattvas and arhats, and even attendant Golden Mist, one of the attendants of the 7 Buddhas, who claimed to be the strongest divine ability of the Buddhist League. There was no doubt that Supremacy had come to negotiate with Wu Qi to redeem Wu Qi. The reason why the 9 Daozu had intentionally exposed their divine wills in front of everyone was that they wanted to tell the 7 Buddhist patriarchs, "We know about your shameful deeds, we have seen them, and we are watching you Buddhist League lose face. If you 7 bald donkeys have the guts, come and bite us." The divine wills of the 7 Buddhist patriarchs had long since disappeared. No matter how thick-skinned they were, the fact that Supremacy and Wu Qi were openly discussing a deal to redeem the sacred beings of the Buddhist League in broad daylight still made them feel a little embarrassed. Now that the 9 Daozu had put on a posture of watching the show, the Buddhist patriarchs should have run as far away as they could. Were they going to stay here and lose face as much as they wanted? In addition to the divine wills of the 9 Daozu, there were a dozen more divine wills lingering in the void. Clearly, the Wahuang clan, Great Horns, and the others were very curious about the sky-high price Wu Qi could fetch, and they were even more curious about whether Supremacy, an elite of the Buddhist League who had suddenly emerged, was also as good at talking as he was at fighting. When Wu Qi and Supremacy collided head-on just now, they actually produced a strange scene that could only be seen during the creation of heaven and earth, which surprised the Wahuang clan and the 18 Dao fusing experts of the Holy Alliance. With such strength, it proved that Wu Qi and Supremacy had stepped into the doorstep of the Dao integration realm. As long as they were willing, they could merge with the heavenly Dao at any time. Putting aside Wu Qi, who owed the Wahuang clan many favors and had a good relationship with the Empress Hua Palace, Dai Venerable had a profound cultivation base and was also the spokesperson chosen by the Buddhist sect for this stage. If his eloquence was as good as his supernatural powers, then the Buddhist sect would have an extraordinary figure. On the contrary, if a Dai Venerable's strength lay in his fists, and his tongue was not as flexible as his fists, then he was much less of a threat to others. A Grand Venerable who only knew how to use his fists to hit others was nothing more than a powerful fighter. His existence was not worth considering. Wu Qi and Dai Venerable stood face to face under the watchful eyes of over 20 Dao integration realm cultivators. Nine Tails waved his long tail excitedly, spitting saliva at Dai Venerable from time to time, putting on a ferocious expression that said, "I'm very interested in your flesh." The saliva of the 9 Tails was so abundant that in just a quarter of an hour, a small pool of water had been stirred up on the ground. Within 1,000 miles of the pool, not even a blade of grass grew. All living creatures were killed by the powerful poison contained in the saliva of the 9 Tails. A Buddhist chant suddenly sounded. Dai Venerable gestured with his fingers and said, "One world venerable, one primordial treasure, one ancient Buddha, 2 chaos spirit treasures, 1 Buddha, 1 chaos spirit treasure, and 1 bodhisattva, 1 connate spirit treasure. How about those arhats, heavenly kings, adamantine, and the like as extras? At most, we can redeem them with immortal stones and spirit stones. The Buddhist sect is poor, so don't even think about taking advantage of us." Wu Qi snorted coldly, then pointed his finger at Supremacy and scolded, "The Buddhist League is poor? How dare a bald donkey like you say something like that? Look at yourself, TSK 18 primordial treasures. You alone have more than 10 times the net worth of me and everyone around me combined. Cut the crap, I'll pay you 10 times the original price." Do as you see fit. Those arhats, heavenly kings, and adamantine aren't worth much. Pay the bodhisattvas and Buddhas, and I won't take a single immortal stone from you for the rest. After a brief pause, Wu Qi toyed with the Vajramuni and said with a smile, and that attendant golden mist, he's said to be the most powerful in the Buddhist sect and the personal attendant of the Buddha. His value cannot be measured by his cultivation base. At the very least, he's worth as much as the 2 world venerables. The venerable smacked his lips and rubbed his sleeves. With a wry smile, he said, "Your price is too ridiculous. Even if the Buddhist sect has some savings, it's still." Zimei Daozu's airy voice came from the void. "My little friend Wu Qi, the Buddhist sect has a deep foundation. I've seen it with my own eyes. Back in the days when the 3 Swallow Mountain, Purple Smoke Valley, and White Bone Abyss fought in the chaos space, hundreds of thousands of chaos fiend gods fell, and those 7 old bald thieves got no less than 100 primordial treasures. As for the other treasures, they have thousands of them. Don't be fooled by this little bald thief's lies." As soon as Zimei Daozu finished, Buddha Guarding Heart's exasperated voice came from the void. "Zimei, you're so lazy. How can you do such a thing with your status? Do you still have the face to see the world?" Zimei laughed lightly. "How can I not have the face to see the world? I'm not like some misers who don't care about the life and death of their disciples but care about worldly possessions. Alas, those primordial treasures are indeed powerful, but what use do they have if no one drives them? My fellow Taoists, you've cultivated for countless years, and the Buddhist sect pays more attention to the cultivation of one's mind. Can't you see through this?" Wu Qi clapped his hands and laughed. He cheered loudly, saying that Zimei Daozu's words were very reasonable. Wu Qi played with the Vajramuni in his hand excitedly and declared to the almighty beings who were watching him, since Zimei Daozu had testified that the Buddhist sect was so rich he, Wu Qi, would not disappoint Zimei Daozu's righteous heart. He strongly demanded that Zimei raise the price the venerable mentioned to 20 times. 20 times. Every revered one had to exchange 20 supreme treasures of primordial. Sitting in Empress Wa's palace, the Wahuang clan's eyebrows were raised, startled by Wu Qi's exorbitant demand. The Wahuang clan had some savings. Being able to survive from the primordial chaotic world to the present, the Wahuang clan was quite wealthy. Although they were not as wealthy as the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and the 9 Tao patriarchs, they still had about a dozen supreme treasures of primordial. But of the price Wu Qi had offered, all the Wahuang clan's wealth was not enough to exchange for an revered one who had been captured alive by Wu Qi. Wasn't this too much of a blow? As for Great Horns and his companions, although they knew Wu Qi's background and were friends with Wu Qi, when they heard Wu Qi call out the price 20 times, they suddenly had the idea of robbing Wu Qi. The 7 Buddhist patriarchs were so angry that their noses went crooked. It was supposed to be a perfectly good thing. With the Venerable's offer, the Buddhist League would put some pressure on Wu Qi and let Wu Qi go on the condition that he would let bygones be bygones. In that case, they might be able to get those captured disciples and disciples back at a very low price. But when Zimei Daozu intervened, and Wu Qi called out such a terrible price, even though the 7 Buddhist patriarchs were very wealthy, they felt a sharp pain in their hearts. 20 supreme treasures of primordial for one revered one? The 7 Buddhist patriarchs were really in the mood to let the 6 useless revered one die. Even if the Shizo dynasty collapsed, and Emperor Wugo and the other high-ranking members of the Shizo dynasty, and even a large number of Shizo dynasty armies were wiped out, it would only be a loss of some minor forces for the Buddhist League. It would not do any harm to the foundation of the Buddhist League. But the price Wu Qi had called out was no different from carving out a piece of flesh from the heart of the Buddhist League. Any supreme treasure of primordial, if used properly, would be a tremendous force that could even dominate a battle. If they really agreed to Wu Qi's request, it would be a real heartache. Before the 7 Buddhist patriarchs could say anything, Wu Qi had already cried out, "Well, cut the crap. As the saying goes, good fortune is hard to part with." When the disciples of the Buddhist League were receiving alms from others, the door was wide open, but when it came to saving their own disciples, the door was tightly closed. After a while of ridicule, Wu Qi burst out laughing and said, "Then, may I ask the 7 Buddhist patriarchs, what is the value of your disciples? How about, for the sake of the 7 Buddhas, 6 revered venerables who are loyal to Buddhism, 36 ancient Buddhas who are loyal to Buddhism, 36 Buddhas who are loyal to Buddhism, 36 Buddhas who are loyal to Buddhism, countless bodhisattvas, arhats, vajras, and heavenly kings who are loyal to Buddhism, and a servant of gold mist who is loyal to Buddhism, give me a copper coin, and I'll return him to you. How about that? 1 copper coin." The 9 Daozu laughed in unison, their laughter spreading across the entire Pangu continent. They thought Wu Qi was too interesting. If Wu Qi had not obstructed the Ling dynasty and was not a friend of the Dao League, they would have recruited Wu Qi into the Dao League. How could he dare to offer such a price to the 7 Buddhist ancestors for a single copper coin? The Buddhist patriarchs were so angry that they could not say a word for a long time. 1 copper coin? Although Wu Qi dared to make such a price, they were too ashamed to do so. Unless they no longer wanted to stay in Pangu world, unless they never wanted to see these old acquaintances of Pangu world again. After a quarter of an hour, Buddha Guarding Will's voice rang out slowly, "Daoi, according to Wu Qi's request, give him the price. Fellow Taoist Wu Qi, remember, from today on, you are the #1 enemy of the Buddhist League, and all the Buddhas in the world can kill you on sight." Wu Qi did not say a word, just looking at Daoi with a smile. Slowly, Day Supremacy fished out a bag made of white cloth from under his sleeve and threw it over to Wu Qi. Just now, he sensed a subtle fluctuation of magic power coming from his sleeve. The bag was not in his sleeve, but had just been delivered to him by someone with a great magic power. He gave the bag a glance with his divine will, then nodded satisfyingly. The Buddhist League was indeed rich. All the primordial supreme treasures and chaos spirit treasures were handed to Wu Qi according to the price he requested. However, Wu Qi also knew that this price far exceeded the bottom line that Buddha Guarding Will had given to Daoi. He had indeed become a great enemy of the Buddhist League. But who cared? Wu Qi was not afraid of what the Buddhist patriarchs could do to him. In for a penny, in for a pound. In front of so many Dao integration stage cultivators, Wu Qi threw the diamond muni to Daoi and shouted, "Daozu, some of your disciples are also in Wu Qi's hands. May I ask what price you are willing to pay for them?" A green mist shot out from the top of his head. Apart from the South Dipper Emperor, the other 5 great celestial emperors spat out their eyes. The 9 Daozu cried out in shock, and the 7 Buddhist patriarchs suddenly burst into laughter. Chapter 1082. Once again, Wu Qi gained a complete victory. He had blocked the 7 Buddhist ancestors' way of retreat with his words, forcing them to redeem the many disciples Wu Qi had captured alive with an unimaginable amount of money. But in the blink of an eye, the retribution was right in front of him. When Wu Qi threw out 5 great celestial emperors, the 7 Buddhist ancestors gloated and helped Wu Qi provoke the 9 Daozu with words. In the end, not only did Wu Qi strip the 5 peak Dao reasoning realm great celestial emperors of their last immortal stone, each of them sold them to the 9 Daozu at a sky-high price that left Wu Qi speechless. Each celestial emperor made the 9 Daozu pay 10 supreme treasures of primordial. Of course, these 50 supreme treasures of primordial were all evil treasures that Taoist immortals couldn't use, just like the treasures given by the 7 Buddhist ancestors. Among them, there were very few treasures that focused on attack and defense, but they had all kinds of strange effects. For example, there was a supreme treasure of primordial called the blood brew pot. It looked like an ordinary wine pot, but as long as the blood essence of various living beings was put into it and fermented for a period of time, it could brew a blood-colored wine. The longer the fermentation time, the stronger the wine would be. This blood-colored wine was rich and mellow, and each drop could increase a cultivator's magic power by 1,000 years. However, with every drop of this blood wine, one's evil energy would grow by a fraction, and one's flesh would melt by a fraction. In the end, this blood brew pot could make one a supreme expert with boundless magic power, but at that time, the person would turn into a skeleton, a complete anomaly of the ghost Tao. All 50 supreme treasures of Primordial were such evil things, and not a single one was ordinary. But Wu Qi did not mind it. He had many demons and fiends under his command, and even if it was the evilest blood brew pot, he would have the best candidate to use it. Wu Chang, aren't you said to be immortal? I'll let you drink the blood wine brewed by the blood brew pot all day long. Since you can't die, Wu Qi could use it as a huge magic converter. When Wu Chang's magic power reached a certain level, Wu Qi would use the method in Scroll of Stealing to extract 90% of his magic power and turn it into his own. By then, the evil energy would have nothing to do with Wu Qi. In any case, in Wu Qi's hands, these evil supreme treasures of Primordial could be used to their greatest effect, and there was no need to worry that they would gather dust in Wu Qi's hands. Having been tricked by the 5 great celestial emperors thrown out by Wu Qi, the 9 Daozu felt humiliated. Resentfully, they grabbed the 5 great celestial emperors and brought them back to the palace of Dao Origin. As for why Wu Qi didn't hand over the South Emperor, the 9 Daozu pretended that they didn't know anything about the South Emperor. According to the Daozu's plan, since all 6 great celestial emperors were captured alive by Wu Qi at the same time, the whereabouts of the South Emperor must be with Wu Qi. When the God Conferment plan was completed and the Daozu could personally strike, they wouldn't be afraid that Wu Qi could fly into the sky or escape underground. In short, the 9 Daozu were caught in a trap of their own making. They had dug a big pit for the Buddhas to jump into, and then Wu Qi turned the tables on them. The Daozu, who were watching from the sidelines, were gently pulled by the Buddhas, and they had no choice but to jump into the pit they had dug with a bitter face. In the end, it was Wu Qi who took advantage of the situation. With more than 100 evil supreme treasures of Primordial, he proudly sat on the back of the 9-tailed beast and quickly escaped underground. The Daozu and the Buddhas seemed to want to leave a divine sense mark on Wu Qi at the same time so that they could find him in the future. But when Wu Qi escaped underground, the Wahuang clan suddenly laughed. She laughed at the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and the 9 Dao patriarchs, and the embarrassed 7 Buddhist patriarchs and 9 Dao patriarchs snorted sulkily and retracted their divine senses. They were too embarrassed to do anything to Wu Qi. When Wu Qi escaped underground, he heard the laughter of the Wahuang clan, and he could not help but sigh. Well, he owed her another favor. Shaking his head, Wu Qi counted the huge harvest along the way, then drove the grumbling 9-tailed beast back to Great Wu's territory. Along the way, the 9-tailed beast complained to Wu Qi about the disappearance of his delicious food with tears in his eyes and saliva splashing all over the place. When it came to emotions, the 9-tailed beast even burst into tears as he carried Wu Qi forward, his tears corroding the rocks and soil along the way into poisonous black smoke. It had not been long since the 9-tailed beast broke out of his shell. Although he was born with tremendous strength, his temperament was no different from that of a child. Wu Qi remembered that he had promised the 6 great celestial emperors to the 9-tailed beast as delicious food. It was true that he had broken his promise and failed to satisfy his appetite. After thinking about it carefully, Wu Qi took out the South Emperor from the heaven-refining cauldron, who looked unsightly. He smiled apologetically at the South Emperor, pulled out the heaven-pacifying sword, and slashed him 4 times in a row. The South Emperor howled miserably as his arms and legs were cut off by Wu Qi and thrown into the 9-tailed beast's mouth. The 9-tailed beast squeaked with joy. He smiled and took a few steps closer to Wu Qi, nodded, and said, "Has my friend Wu Qi chosen to pledge allegiance to me? Hey, since you sold the other 5 great celestial emperors to Daozu, I've had this guess." Wu Qi kicked the South Celestial Emperor in front of Liu Bang and said coolly, "Cut the crap. The South Celestial Emperor has seen your clone in the divine kingdom of Immortal, and he knows your background. If I return him to the Dao League, I'm afraid you won't be the human emperor anymore. Now, I'll hand the South Emperor over to you, and I only want a promise and an oath from you." Liu Bang's face turned green and black. He looked down at the South Emperor, who was about 10 feet away from him, and a fierce light suddenly flashed in his eyes. A clear cry rang out, and a thick black mist suddenly gushed out from the surface of the South Emperor's body. The sky-veiling flag of chaos floated above the South Emperor's body, firmly protecting him. 7 colorful clouds shot out from Lu Bang's sleeve, wrapped in 7 small bolts, and shot at the South Emperor's chest like lightning. Fortunately, the sky-veiling flag of chaos was activated first. The 7 bolts shot about 2 inches into the black mist before losing their strength, exploding into a few fist-sized balls of light and disappearing. The air was filled with a pungent stench. Clearly, the bolts were dipped in poison. When Wu Qi smelled the stench, he felt his vision go black and his mind go blank. The toxicity of the poison was so amazing that even Wu Qi, with his strong body, felt dizzy. If the South Emperor was hit by it, he would immediately die. The South Emperor roared furiously, "Vile spawn, do you really want to kill your father?" Wu Qi's finger burst with a bright light, silencing the South Emperor. Smiling, he nodded to Lu Bang and said, "Your Majesty, please consider it carefully. I never force people." At Wu Qi's words, the 8,000 soldiers of the undead army emerged from behind the rocks and ancient trees. They stared coldly at Lu Bang, and an enormous invisible pressure made Lu Bang's body stiffen in an instant. "I never force people," said Wu Qi coolly. "You have so many incarnations, so it's not a big deal to kill one of them, is it? I'll kill Han Xian and the others in Chang'an, and then let Wu Tianming continue to be the Emperor of Great Wu. What do you think?" Lu Bang's eyes darted back and forth. After 10 minutes, he spread his hands with a wry smile and said, "You win. What promise do you want? What oath?" Shrugging his shoulders, Wu Qi crossed his arms over his chest and said with a smile, "In fact, both are the same thing. Well, as long as your Majesty swears, the more vicious the better. Well, your Majesty, all your subordinates, and everyone related to your Majesty must not take the initiative to frame me and all the people around me." This so-called frame-up includes all sorts of poisons, curses, spells, and all sorts of divine abilities and secret techniques, as well as all sorts of traps, calculations, schemes, and stratagems. They won't work. After a long speech of more than 1,000 words, Wu Qi told Lu Bang an extremely strict oath without any loopholes. Lu Bang's face turned blue with anger because of Wu Qi. Gritting his teeth, he glanced at the South Emperor, who was lying motionless on the ground, and then at Wu Qi. Finally, he raised his right hand and said, "If fellow Taoist Wu Qi can do one thing for me, what's the point of making such a vicious oath?" That gave Wu Qi pause. "What thing?" he asked reflexively. "Why should I do anything for you?" Lu Bang narrowed his eyes and said in a deep voice, "Well, I'll pay fellow Taoist Wu Qi a lot of money to do something for me. What do you think?" Wu Qi stared blankly at Lu Bang for a long time, then suddenly burst into laughter and nodded. Chapter 1083. Wu Qi looked thoughtfully at Lu Bang. A treasure that could be obtained by risking the South Emperor's life and risking the position of human emperor to get Wu Qi's help must be something extraordinary. But it could also be a trap, or some other hidden meaning. But, so what if he agreed for the time being? Let's see what Lu Bang had to say first. Besides, Wu Qi was very interested in the so-called expensive employment. Lu Bang looked at Wu Qi with a smile and said slowly, "The treasure is now in the hands of the Golden Body Dragon Mother Buddha, one of the past Buddhas of the Buddhist League. She has served more than 30 generations of Buddhas. She holds a high position and holds great power. The shape of the treasure is a fist-sized red agate bead. Now, the Golden Mother Dragon Buddha inlaid it on a golden flame Buddhist crown as a decoration." Then, Lu Bang added, "The golden flame crown has the magical effect of making one invisible, and it can release golden flames to forcibly seize the enemy's magical treasures. It is the favorite item of the Golden Body Dragon Mother Buddha, and she wears it on her head all year round." Wu Qi snorted coldly and said, "You want me to go to the head of the past Buddhas of the Buddhist League and remove that thing for you?" Nodding slowly, Lu Bang's smile was filled with a cheap air that made Wu Qi want to stomp him to the ground. Lu Bang squinted at Wu Qi and said with a smile, Although she is one of the so-called Buddhas of the past, there are countless Buddhas of the past, present, and future in the Buddhist League. It is nothing more than a title. The cultivation base of the Golden Body Dragon Mother Buddha is only at the middle level of the Tao-breaking realm. I think it will not be difficult for the King of East Sea to obtain it. Staring coldly at Liu Bang, Wu Qi looked down at the South Emperor, who was lying on the ground and unable to move. The South Emperor, who was tightly wrapped by the sky-veiling flag of chaos, tried his best to prove his existence. He tried his best to twist his body, but he couldn't move at all. His throat was sealed by Wu Qi's restriction, so he couldn't make any sound. Liu Bang didn't even look at the South Emperor. Perhaps it was as he said, he had been reincarnated countless times in the mortal world, so he didn't see the South Emperor as his father anymore. In fact, ever since the South Dipper Emperor ordered Liu Bang to reincarnate in the mortal world for the first time, Liu Bang had already severed the father-son relationship in his heart. The South Dipper Emperor only regarded him as a tool to control the mortal world, and he, Liu Bang, also regarded the South Dipper Emperor as a tool to provide him with all kinds of convenience and cultivation resources. In Liu Bang's eyes, he didn't see the slightest compassion for the South Dipper Emperor, nor did he see the slightest weakness and fear in Liu Bang's eyes. Wu Qi couldn't help but sigh. The heaven-refining cauldron breathed out a stream of clear air and sucked the South Emperor into it. Looking at Liu Bang, he said, "Let's talk about the terms. How much can you give me to do this for you?" Looking in the direction where the South Emperor had disappeared, Liu Bang said coolly, "Get that red agate and give me that South Dipper, and I'll agree to your conditions. I'll swear an oath that I will never offend you or the people around you. It is indeed risky to provoke the Golden Body Dragon Mother Buddha. What can I give you? How about an elixir of immortality left behind by Wu Chang?" Wu Qi stared at Liu Bang in amazement and snapped, "You have the elixir of immortality left behind by Wu Chang?" Liu Bang nodded slowly and said, "Not only the elixir of immortality left behind by Wu Chang, but after so many years of continuous calcination, it has really matured and has no side effects. My clone of the immortal deity Emperor has obtained 3 portions of the elixir of immortality, and has taken 2. The last one is enough to make hundreds of millions of mortals immortal, or give a Tao-breaking expert an immortal and indestructible body." With a strange smile, Liu Bang said indifferently, "I don't know how Wu Chang and the other monsters refined this strange thing, but it is indeed effective. At least, the reason why my clone of the immortal deity Emperor has the cultivation base he has today, and he is the strongest of all my clones, is because of the 2 portions of the elixir of immortality he has taken." Glancing coldly at Liu Bang, Wu Qi asked in a low voice, "What is that red agate?" Liu Bang just smiled and said nothing. He looked at Wu Qi with a smile and shook his head repeatedly. Clearly, he would never reveal the origin of the red agate. Wu Qi knew that this red agate must have an extraordinary origin. Perhaps even the Golden Body Dragon Mother Buddha herself had not figured out the true identity of this red agate. Perhaps she had only found something unusual about this red agate, so she inlaid it on the golden flame crown. Thinking of the deal with Liu Bang, Wu Qi smiled mysteriously. He nodded slowly and said, "Well, I have nothing to do recently, and I don't know where to go." "Well, so what if I get this agate stone for you? But there's one more condition. When I hand over the agate stone to your Majesty must explain the origin of the stone to me. Otherwise, don't blame me for falling out with you." Liu Bang's eyes flickered. After a while, he slowly raised his right palm and made an oath. He swore that as long as Wu Qi could hand over the red agate to him, he would explain the origin of this red agate to Wu Qi. With a long laugh, Wu Qi turned into a stream of flame and soared into the sky, disappearing without a trace along with the 9 tails. The 8,000 soldiers of the undead army disappeared with him as well. Like ghosts, no one knew where they came from and where they went. Liu Bang's face suddenly changed. He looked back in horror and said, "Just as the immortal deity Emperor said, his escape technique is simply appalling. What kind of escape technique is that? Why can't I see his figure clearly even with the universe mystic mirror?" A figure wearing a dark purple dragon robe and a sky-reaching crown slowly emerged from behind Lu Bang. It was obvious that he was also an emperor. This person looked exactly like Lu Bang, and was another one of Lu Bang's doppelgangers. A fist-sized grayish Shin pearl floated above this man's head. His entire body was shrouded in a layer of Shin power, concealing all his aura. The face of this dark purple dragon robe Lu Bang was twisted, with visible beads of cold sweat trickling down his forehead. He said eerily, "The universe mystic Een mirror can only detect the movements of Een ghosts and Een deities. His escape art clearly doesn't belong to the lineage of ghosts and deities, so how did you manage to see through his movements? Instead, I used the Shen pearl born from the chaos to protect myself, and he actually found out about my existence." Slowly turning around, Lu Bang saw a palm-sized tear on his robe, which was as thin as a strand of hair. He said lightly, "I don't know what method he used to find me, and I don't know what he used to injure me. This man is unfathomable, and if we want to be enemies with him, we must kill him with a thunderous method. If we can't be enemies with him, we can only befriend him with money and beauties. Our great plan is progressing smoothly, so we can't let him disturb us at this critical juncture." Lu Bang's face turned green. He frowned and said with a bitter smile, "This conferment of the gods was originally intended by the 7 Buddhas and 9 Taoists to turn the apocalypse of heaven and earth for their own use. Who knows how many almighty experts of the Buddhist League and Taoist League who have been cultivating in seclusion for countless years have shown up. But who exactly is this Wu Qi? He doesn't look like a spy of the Buddhist League, nor is he a hermit cultivator of the Taoist League. He seems to have popped out of a rock. Who is he?" The two Lu Bangs looked at each other speechlessly. After a long while, the purple-robed Lu Bang sighed. The Shen pearl on top of his head sprinkled a vast expanse of gray gas that filled an area of 100 miles, and his figure gradually melted in the gray gas, disappearing without a trace. Lu Bang frowned and looked at the sky for a while. After a long time, he shook his head and flew toward Chang, and on a cloud. Wu Qi had just used the escape method to soar into the sky and bring Nine Tails and the 8,000 undead army away. But when he was less than 100 miles away, he immediately put everyone, including Nine Tails, into the heaven refining cauldron and stealthily returned to where he was. Just now, he sensed that a man with a very strong cultivation base was secretly following behind Lu Bang. Without batting an eyelid, he concealed the light and aura of the heaven-pacifying sword and gave the man a silent slash. He did not hurt the man's flesh, but only cut a small hole in his dragon robe, causing it to lose 70% of its defensive power. When he returned to where he was, Lu Bang happened to appear, clad in a purple dragon robe. The two of them chatted for a while, and then Lu Bang slipped away with the help of the Shin Pearl, and Wu Qi immediately chased after him. Riding on a clump of gray gas, Lu Bang traveled at high speed through the void. In the blink of an eye, he had left the thick atmosphere of Pangu continent and arrived in the outer heavenly realm. He took a deep breath and suddenly sighed with emotion. It's going to be difficult. If the soul fixation pearl really falls into our hands, are the 9 of us really going to be separated into 9 strangers? TSK, with our temperament, if we are divided into 9 people, I'm afraid our plan will fail if we plot and kill each other. Shaking his head, he murmured in a low voice, Alas, alas, I can't believe that Wuxian's mystic art has such a side effect. Who would have thought that the mystic art of Wuxian could really turn us into 9 almost independent souls that are largely unrelated to each other? If we have the soul fixation pearl, we can really cut off the connection in our souls, and from then on, we will be truly independent. Wu Qi raised his brows and narrowed his eyes into a very strange smile. So that red agate is called the soul fixation pearl? As the name suggested, it was a treasure that could stabilize souls and divine souls. Wu Xian had divided Lu Bang's soul into 9 parts? Kiske, what an amazing divine ability. But the side effect was indeed damned. Even though the Great Yi Supremacy and Shou Zhuo Lord had stepped into the Tao fusing realm, they still had to obediently serve Wu Qi as their master, and they would never stir up trouble. But the 9 clones of Lu Bang seemed to have their own ideas, which was really interesting. Could it be that the soul fixation pearl had other functions? For example, letting the person who got it suppress the other 8 and devour all their souls and cultivation bases? If that was the case, it would explain why Lu Bang would rather expose his secret and ask Wu Qi to help him get the soul fixation pearl. Interesting, it was really interesting. That should be it. Otherwise, with the strength of the immortal deity emperor and the others, why would Lu Bang ask me to help him get the soul fixation pearl? After narrowing his eyes and pondering for a while, Wu Qi looked at the purple-robed Lu Bang again. He already knew the plan of Great Wu's emperor, Lu Bang. Did he not have any countermeasures? Just as Wu Qi was thinking about this problem, the purple-robed Lu Bang whistled, and several dark clouds rolled over from the distant sky. Chapter 1084. Dark clouds rolled, and one could only vaguely see green eyes and golden claws looming in the purple-black clouds. The ghostly cries were bone-chilling, making Wu Qi shiver involuntarily. Purple-robed Lu Bang clasped his hands behind his back, looking at the 7 dark clouds in front of him, and said indifferently, "Heaven disorienting 7 owls, listen up. These days, just guard outside the Great Vulture Mountain. If that Wu Qi goes into the Great Vulture Mountain, you don't have to worry about him, but if he comes out of the Great Vulture Mountain, palms forming into blades," purple-robed Lu Bang gently swung down, and said coldly and ruthlessly, "If he comes out of the Great Vulture Mountain, kill him and seize his treasures. Not only the soul fixation pearl, but also the hundreds of primordial supreme treasures on him." With a few strange laughs, the purple-robed Lu Bang's figure suddenly disintegrated into a thick gray fog, scattering in all directions. In the blink of an eye, the fog dissipated, and he also disappeared without a trace. Only a faint, erratic voice lingered in the void. "Soul fixation pearl, soul fixation pearl, is it really as he said, only able to stabilize the mind, condense the soul, and cut off the connection between the various incarnations?" Wu Qi smiled. This was not only the doubt of purple-robed Lu Bang, he also had the same question. The heaven-disorienting 7 owls wrapped in dark clouds let out a sharp cry, tumbling and flying in the direction of the Great Vulture Mountain. Wu Qi glanced in the direction where the true body of purple-robed Lu Bang had disappeared, his fingers twitching for a while, and finally restrained the impulse to chase after him and kill him on the spot. The immortal deity Emperor Lu Bang had that man-made fiend god as his trump card, and this purple-robed Lu Bang's aura was strange and mysterious. Wu Qi would rather borrow a knife to kill him than to confront the secretive clone of Lu Bang himself. After pondering for a moment, Wu Qi split his primordial spirit and communicated with esteemed Shou Zhua and Dei Venerable. Then he contacted Princess Zhonglu, Xia, and the others and arranged everything. Only then did he release the 9-tailed beast. Riding on the 9-tailed beast's back, they flew toward the Great Vulture Mountain as if nothing had happened. Along the way, the void was empty. There was no longer the grand scene of flying swords and cultivators scurrying about in the past. Occasionally, a large group of fiend celestials from other domains would fly across the void, howling and roaring. Wherever they passed, the flowers and trees on some of the planets in the outer domain would be devoured by them, leaving not even a single blade of grass behind. Some of these foreign fiend gods had fled from the celestial court after suffering great losses when Taoism reclaimed it, and some were the troops of the foreign fiend god leaders who were controlled by Buddhism. The foreign fiend gods who committed crimes were like a pack of hungry wolves, leaving not a single blade of grass alive wherever they passed. On the other hand, the foreign fiend gods controlled by Buddhism were organized and disciplined to attack the planets controlled by Taoism and destroy the legacy of Taoism there. None of the mighty figures of Buddhism and Taoism roamed the foreign fiend gods. The various heavenly passes and immortal passes where the celestial court was stationed were also destroyed by the foreign fiend gods. The ruins floated in the void without any signs of life. Along the way to the Great Vulture Mountain, Wu Qi felt nothing but desolation. Although the celestial fiends from the outer heavenly realms were scurrying about, they were like shadows on a curtain, adding to the loneliness. The Kunlun mirror in the ghost realm was still constantly releasing foreign fiend gods. More and more foreign fiend gods were running amok in Pangu world. A small number of them were still controlled by Buddhism, but most of them were acting on instinct. If they were allowed to continue running amok, there would probably not be a single Buddhist or Taoist disciple left in the outer void. But what does this have to do with me? Wu Qi looked around. On a brown planet not far away, a huge monastery had just been attacked by tens of thousands of fiend gods. Hundreds of thousands of gray-robed and white-robed monks fled in a sorry state, but were caught up by the fiend gods and devoured into their stomachs. Wu Qi sighed softly and recited a few lines of the Rebirth Sutra for these Buddhist disciples. He drove the 9 tails straight to the Great Vulture Mountain. As long as these foreign fiend gods did not infringe on Wu Qi's interests, he could not be bothered with them. Buddhism and Taoism? Perhaps one day, Wu Qi would join forces with them to fight the enemy, but the enemy could only be a world destroyer like Thousand Head. Compared to an existence with an unknown origin like Thousand Head, these foreign fiend gods were nothing. After witnessing the miserable scene of countless Taoist and Buddhist monasteries being attacked, Wu Qi finally arrived at the Great Vulture Mountain. The radiant Great Spirit Vulture Mountain had already recovered from the devil tribulation, and it was still the dignified Buddhist Holy Land. In the north, south, east, and west directions of the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain, an incomparably huge camp was set up. 4 foreign fiend gods who had cultivated the golden body of Buddha occupied the core of the camps, suppressing the countless foreign fiend gods under their command. With the protection of these fellows, although Prince Chongqing had opened up a spatial tunnel near Spirit Vulture Mountain several times and sent countless fiend gods from outer domains to this place, they were all defeated by these fiend gods who had converted to the Buddhist League. Wu Qi was left speechless when he saw the 4 huge camps, which occupied an area of hundreds of millions of miles each. The few Buddhist ancestors sure had some tricks up their sleeves. When did they subdue the leaders of the other realm fiend celestials and convert them to Buddhism? Even the celestial court was nearly wiped out by the foreign fiend gods this time, but the loss to the Great Vulture Mountain was negligible. It seemed that the 7 Buddhist patriarchs had the upper hand. After sighing with emotion for a while, Wu Qi carefully hid himself in a meteor belt closest to the Great Vulture Mountain. The meteor belt was so wide that it almost covered the entire Great Vulture Mountain. If the Buddhist cultivators in the mountain were to look up at the sky, they would see that the meteor belt looked like the Milky Way seen on Earth in the mortal world. Densely packed with colorful starlight illuminated the void, it was truly a beautiful scenery outside the Great Vulture Mountain. Right now, Wu Qi was hiding in this small meteor belt, sitting cross-legged in a cave on a small planet with a diameter of less than 1,000 miles. He fished out a tiny incense stick that was as white as jade and lit it up. The incense stick was pure white, but once it was lit, it would emit a pinkish smoke that was so fragrant that it could make one drowsy. It was the most common method used by the joyous sect. In just 3 breaths of time, the 3-inch-long incense stick had burned out completely. The dense pinkish smoke wheeled around Wu Qi for a while, then gradually collapsed and compressed, eventually condensing into a tiny pink bird that flew around Wu Qi. The little bird let out a crisp and pleasant chirp, and before long, another chirp was heard coming from outside the cave. A pink bird of the same size spread its wings and flew into the cave. The 2 birds quickly came together, rubbed their necks intimately for a while, and chirped at each other for a while. Then, they exploded into a clump of smoke at the same time, then merged together and transformed into a mirror of light, hovering in front of Wu Qi. A naked Lao AI appeared in the mirror. He was lying on a large soft couch, surrounded by over 100 beautiful girls with pinkish skin and drenched in sweat. Mo stood proudly on her fair arms and legs, showing off her magnificent lower body to Wu Qi. After that, she waved a beam of pink Buddhist light and pulled the girls into the Buddhist kingdom she had refined in the palm of her hand. Then, she slowly pulled a robe and wrapped half of her body. What is it? Just say it. This incense stick made from the souls of the rhinoceros twin birds can only ensure the safety of our communication for 10 minutes. After that time, we might be discovered by someone. Just say it. Lao AI rubbed his huge bald head and looked at Wu Qi smilingly. There were countless strange creatures in this world, and the rhinoceros twin birds were one of them. This bird was renowned for its strong attachment and love. However, Lao Ai had used this bird, which symbolized the most beautiful love in the world, to extract its blood essence and soul, then refined it into incense stick with a mystic technique of the joyful sect. With the help of this incense stick, even on the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain, even under the divine senses of the 7 Buddhist patriarchs, they could still communicate safely for 10 minutes. Tao integration stage supreme beings were indeed impressive, but they were not omniscient and omnipotent beings. Just like in the mystic realm of the celestial court, the incense stick made by Lao Ai could also shield them from divine senses. Wu Qi did not waste any time. He knew that this incense stick was very expensive to make, especially since each pair of incense needed to waste the souls of a pair of rhinoceros twin birds. That was even more sinful. He quickly said, "This has nothing to do with you. Find Lord Long Yang for me and tell him that I want him to do something for me. If he refuses, then tell him that unless he doesn't leave the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain, I'll definitely chop off his bald head." Lao Ai laughed gloatingly. He nodded and said, "Lord Long Yang, that old rabbit?" Laughing strangely, Lao Ai nodded and said, "I'll help you with this. Golden Body Dragon Mother Buddha, I've never liked her for a long time. Last time, I just flirted with her maidservants and touched their breasts, and that old woman broke one of my arms. If you want to plot against her, I'll help you for free." Wu Qi gave Lao Ai a deep look, shrugged and said, "I don't need Prince of Changshin to do anything. Just bring me the news." After a brief pause, Wu Qi said lightly, "I don't know if you know that Ying Zheng is the reincarnation of Emperor Zhuanxu. In short, you can't take revenge on Ying Zheng. But Lu Buwei has hooked up with Lu Bang. As far as I know, Lu Buwei is now Great Wu's prime minister, in charge of Great Wu's government affairs." Lao Ai was slightly taken aback. He narrowed his eyes and said in a flat voice, "The past can't be forgotten. Lu Buwei is with Lu Bang? I see." Squinting at Wu Qi, Lao Ai smiled strangely and said, "Duke of Wu Qi, you and I are allies, right?" Wu Qi looked deeply at Lao Ai and nodded slowly. "Of course, you help me and I help you. Our interests will not harm each other, so we are allies. Maybe we can even try to be friends." Lao Ai smacked his lips, then nodded and said, "I'll send a message to the old rabbit now. He is very favored now, and he is hooked up with the goddess of dragon roar. She is the last disciple of Golden Body Dragon Mother Buddha, the most favored kind." After shattering the mirror with a flick of his finger, Wu Qi chuckled. Before long, a white lotus emerged in front of Wu Qi, and Lord Long Yang, clad in a moon-white robe, walked out slowly. Chapter 1085. Lord Long Yang, who looked like a 16-year-old beauty, slowly walked out from the White Lotus. He was wearing a long robe that was as white as water, and half of his snow-white and tender arms were exposed. He gave people a feeling of grace and grace. However, amidst that gentle and graceful bearing, when Lord Long Yang raised his sword-like eyebrows, a boundless heroic spirit immediately rushed out, making people feel that he was a real man. The neutral, feminine beauty that Lord Long Yang gave people when he was on Myriad Immortals' planet was gone. Standing in front of Wu Qi was Lord Long Yang, who had almost been reborn. Standing in front of Wu Qi, he looked like a treasured sword hidden in its scabbard, so awe-inspiring that no one could look him in the eye. A few fine hairs on Wu Qi's eyebrows stood up. The piercingly cold aura emanating from Lord Long Yang's body was truly amazing. Nodding his head inwardly, Wu Qi said in a deep voice, "It has been a few years since we parted. How have you been, Lord Long Yang?" Lord Long Yang did not answer. With a shake of his hand, he sprinkled a few golden relics, which formed a swastika seal on the ground. The small seal emitted a dazzling golden light and filled the entire cave. Only then did he breathe out a sigh of relief. Sitting cross-legged in front of Wu Qi, Lord Long Yang pointed at the swastika seal and said coolly, "This is the seal used by the disciples of Buddhist League when they go into secluded cultivation. With the Buddhist power emitted from this seal, the surrounding disciples will not use their divine will to scan this place. Wu Qi was speechless. If it were someone else meeting with Lord Long Yang here, such a precautionary measure would be necessary. But for Wu Qi, this little restrictive measure was simply superfluous. Long before Lord Long Yang's arrival, Wu Qi had already covered the entire planet with a formation. So, even if the 7 Buddhist patriarchs came here personally, they would not be able to discover the existence of this cave, let alone scanning with divine will. Nevertheless, it was good to be cautious, as Lord Long Yang's spirit, energy, and spirit were very different from before. Therefore Wu Qi just let him be. Taking a deep breath, Wu Qi looked at Duke of Long Yang and said with a smile, "My lord, you seem to be very different from before." Lord of Long Yang let out a faint smile. He sat cross-legged on the ground, placed both hands in front of his lower abdomen and formed a lotus seal. Today's Long Yang is very different from back then. Whether it is his state of mind or other aspects, it is far from comparable to back then. Taking a deep breath, Duke of Long Yang said calmly, "Today, my heart belongs to someone else, and I don't want to be involved in the affairs of the mortal world." Looking at Duke of Long Yang in surprise, Wu Qi smiled and said, "Since you don't want to cause any trouble, you shouldn't have come to see me, Wu Qi." After a moment of silence, Duke of Long Yang shook his head and said, "In the past, Duke of Tianyun and Long Yang became allies. Although Duke of Long Yang's words are not golden, I still know the word, trustworthiness. No matter what Duke Tianyun needs Long Yang's help with, Long Yang will do his best to help. But just this one thing." Staring quietly at Wu Qi with his eyes as clear as water, Duke of Long Yang said slowly, "When this matter is over, Long Yang will find a quiet and secluded place to live in seclusion. From now on, I will be free and unfettered from the world, no longer caring about all the troubles in the world." Wu Qi did not speak for a long while. Suddenly he felt very guilty. He had a feeling that Duke of Long Yang was like a prostitute who had turned over a new leaf, and he was forced to drag her into the muddy water again. But, if it was just a gold bodhisattva, Wu Qi had complete confidence that he could retrieve the object from the crown of gold bodhisattva. But this was Spirit Vulture Mountain, guarded by 7 almighty experts of Tao-fusing realm. Wu Qi did not have the confidence that he could escape from the mountain safely after retrieving the Pearl of Soul Fixation. The White Rat Demon who created the Scroll of Stealing had the same cultivation base as Wu Qi now, a peak-stage Tao-breaking expert. But he was still hunted by all the almighty experts under the heaven, and eventually, his soul was destroyed. Since the White Rat Demon had suffered a setback in the hands of Buddha, Wu Qi felt that it was not a wise choice to break into Spirit Vulture Mountain so rashly. In order to get the Pearl of Soul Fixation, to see through some of Liu Bang's arrangements, and at the same time, Wu Qi himself was very interested in the Pearl of Soul Fixation. With all these factors combined, he could only ask Duke of Long Yang for help. Just as he was about to state out his demands and conditions, Wu Qi suddenly heard some subtle noises. He could not help but exclaim in surprise, then looked at Duke of Long Yang and said, "When you came out, were you followed by someone?" Duke of Long Yang was surprised. "How is that possible? I have been very careful on this trip, fearing that someone might know about it. In Spirit Vulture Mountain, no almighty expert will pay attention to the movements of a little bodhisattva like me. Who would follow me?" Upon hearing Duke of Long Yang's words, Wu Qi suddenly realized that Duke of Long Yang actually possessed the cultivation base of a bodhisattva. He recalled that he was just a mere heaven immortal in the past, but in just a few years, he had already possessed such an overall strength. It showed that he was living a good life in Dragon Mother Buddha's place. Wu Qi was surprised. Since he was so favored and trusted by Dragon Mother Buddha, and could attain such a strong cultivation base in such a short time, why would someone follow him every time he went out? Shaking his head, Wu Qi waved his hand casually in the air. A stream of watery light shot out from it, revealing 4 itinerant monks clad in red kasayas. Duke of Long Yang's face fell when he saw the 4 itinerant monks. His aura froze, and the rock he was sitting on suddenly turned into fine powder. Gnashing his teeth in anger, he cried out, They are the attendants of the Crown Prince of Dragon Mother Buddha. They are collectively known as the four auspicious bodhisattvas. The Turtle Dragon Crown Prince under the Golden Dragon Mother Buddha. Wu Qi suddenly thought of what Lao Ai had told him. When Duke of Longyang was severely wounded, it was the last disciple of Dragon Mother Buddha, the goddess of Dragon Cry, who saved him. Wu Qi chuckled and said, "The Crown Prince of Dragon Cry, the goddess of Dragon Cry, these names sound like a pair. Could it be that you snatched away my love and captured the heart of the Dragon Roar goddess?" Duke of Longyang stared at Wu Qi in astonishment and asked, "How did you know?" Wu Qi twitched his mouth. Was there a need to ask? He had heard too many of these cliché stories back on Earth. Clearly, the Crown Prince of Dragon Mother Buddha was an existence with a very high status, and judging from the fact that his attendants were four itinerant monks with the cultivation base of a bodhisattva, one could easily tell how powerful he was. Who knows, maybe Gue Dragon Crown Prince and Dragon Cry Goddess were childhood sweethearts or even had an engagement. In the end, Lord Longyang, this old white face, interfered and Dragon Cry Goddess fell in love with someone else. Wouldn't Gue Dragon Crown Prince chop this old white face into dog meat sauce? Amidst the watery light, the four bodhisattvas stealthily rode a cloud and landed on the small planet. They ran like the wind and searched the entire planet in the blink of an eye. Then, they shook their heads at the same time and murmured a few words in a low voice. Wu Qi's water mirror technique was extremely profound, so he could hear their whispers clearly. The four bodhisattvas were grumbling strangely. "I saw that damned pretty boy land on a cloud just now. Why did he suddenly disappear?" Duke of Longyang's expression was very unsightly. Clearly, Luck Rui was after him. When he received Lao Ai's message today, he immediately left the White Lotus Bay of Dragon Mother Cave on Mount Spirit Vulture, where he cultivated in seclusion, and came to meet Wu Qi in secret without telling anyone. But even though he was so cautious, he was still targeted. Clearly, Luck Rui had been watching his every move. They all have the cultivation base of second-grade bodhisattva, so they are more than 10,000 times stronger than you who just stepped into the realm of bodhisattva? Wu Qi shook his head. If any one of them targeted Duke of Longyang, they could easily kill him, let alone the four of them working together. Clearly, the Crown Prince of Dragon Crown Prince was not willing to give Duke of Longyang any chance of survival and was determined to kill him. With a gloomy face, Duke of Longyang said slowly, "The revered dragon treasured light devil subduing mantra that the Crown Prince cultivates is already at the level of Buddha. Other than Golden Dragon Mother Buddha, the Crown Prince's cultivation base can be ranked top 5 in the Dragon Mother Cave. I'm afraid that not only will I not be able to help you today, I will even implicate you and put you in danger of losing your life." Wu Qi did not care about the four itinerant monks outside at all. Duke of Longyang thought that Wu Qi's cultivation base was the same as it was in the past. Even if Wu Qi was strong, he would not be stronger than him, let alone Luck Rui sent by the Crown Prince of Dragon. He really did not know about Wu Qi's illustrious reputation over the years, nor did he know that Wu Qi had one foot in the realm of Tao integration. Looking at Duke of Longyang's slightly conflicted face, Wu Qi laughed strangely and teased, "Lord, are you really in love with that Dragon Roar goddess?" Duke of Longyang gave Wu Qi a glare grumpily. Judging from the look on his face, he almost wanted to give Wu Qi a kick. After a long time, he smiled bitterly and said, "Yes." Golden Dragon Mother had the intention of letting her dual cultivate with the Crown Prince of Dragons, but the Crown Prince of Dragons was domineering and fierce, and she had never liked him. It was also an ill-fated relationship. When Longyang was seriously injured, she saved him. Since then, they fell in love, and as time passed, they formed a lifelong alliance. As Duke of Longyang narrated, the melodramatic plot that Wu Qi was very familiar with unfolded one after another. Amidst the watery light, the four itinerant monks rushed here and there, but they could not find Duke of Longyang. No matter what they did, with Wu Qi's restriction on the outside, how could they sense Duke of Longyang's aura through Wu Qi's restriction? Having no other choice, the four itinerant monks gathered together and discussed for a while. Then, they took out a shiny golden Vajra ring at the same time. They rose into the air and threw out the Vajra rings. The 4 Vajra rings, each about a foot in diameter, expanded to over 1,000 miles in diameter in the wind, firmly trapping the small planet where Wu Qi was at the center of the rings. Then, the 4 itinerant monks began to recite a mantra, and the 4 golden Vajra rings gradually compressed inwards. The small planet, which measured over 1,000 miles in diameter, was crushed by the tremendous force and turned into green smoke that drifted away in the air. Duke of Longyang did not look at what was happening in the watery light. He sighed faintly and said, "Longyang only wishes to find a quiet and secluded place where I can cultivate with her hand in hand. That will be enough for my life." He gave Wu Qi an embarrassed look, then sighed and said, "Longyang, I'm tired." Wu Qi did not say a word. Duke of Longyang was tired, but Wu Qi himself did not have the qualification to be involved. Taking a deep breath, Wu Qi suddenly burst out laughing and said, "Why do you say that, my lord? He is just a mere dragon prince. Help me steal the red agate from the head of that golden-bodied dragon Mother Buddha. As for the turtle dragon prince, even if he is a revered Buddhist monk, I'll chop off his bald head and let my lord kick it like a ball. What do you say?" Duke of Longyang was taken aback. He stared at Wu Qi and cried out in shock, "What?" Wu Qi just smiled. He clasped his palms together and gave them a light slap. Immediately, the heads of the 4 bodhisattvas in the watery light exploded like 4 blooming flowers. Chapter 1086. The 4 bodhisattvas were killed so casually that Lord Longyang did not even see clearly how Wu Qi did it. Duke of Longyang was taken aback by the scene in the water mirror. His face turned pale as he stared at Wu Qi, sizing him up from head to toe, as if this was the first time he met him. Clapping his hands, Wu Qi scratched his head and said with a smile, "I've made a big commotion. If you want to help me, go back to the Dragon Mother cave and find a way to place this drunken dragon incense in an incense burner near the golden dragon Mother Buddha. As long as you don't expose yourself, I'll have a way to retrieve that red agate." Handing a specially fortified drunken dragon incense to Lord Longyang, Wu Qi lightly patted his shoulder and sent him straight to the entrance of Gridrakuta Mountain, just missing a handsome young man who flew out angrily on an auspicious cloud. The young man was clad in a water cloud dragon robe. Judging from the way he dressed, he did not look like a cultivator of the Buddhist League. Instead, he looked like a prince of the mortal world. Apart from the white robe, the gloomy-faced young man, who had a pair of golden gleams in his eyes, was also clad in a thin silver flood dragon armor and carried a fire-tipped spear on his back. Judging from his appearance, he did look like a talented man. Wu Qi knew that the Buddhist League had a vast hidden power. Apart from the disciples of the Buddhist League, there were also countless protectors and believers. Judging from the way the young man was dressed, it was obvious that he was not a disciple of the Buddhist League. Instead, he should be a relative of a powerful protector of the Buddhist League. He had entered the Buddhist League as an in-name disciple and learned some powerful divine abilities and spells. In the future, he could choose whether he would stay in the Buddhist League or return to his home. Judging from the ferocious look on this young man's face, and the fact that he immediately rushed out after Wu Qi killed Lucky Dragon Rui with a single palm strike, Wu Qi knew that he was the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince. Just from his name, one could tell that he could only be considered an in-name disciple of the Golden Dragon Mother. Furthermore, the Golden Dragon Mother had the intention of allowing him to dual cultivate with the Dragon Roar Goddess. It was evident that the power behind the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince was still very powerful. Even the Golden Dragon Mother had to rope him in. After all, apart from Buddhism and Taoism, there were many other powerful beings in Pangu world, such as Empress Wa Palace, the 18 Saints, the Ghost World, the Devil World, the Spirit World, and the Spirit World. Who knew which powerful being this Nightmare Dragon Prince was? Lord Longyang hurriedly returned to the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain while Wu Qi sat quietly in the cave, waiting for the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince. When the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince was less than 100 miles away from the small planet, Wu Qi smashed the small planet with a palm strike and fled into the distance with a long howl. The speed of his escape light was slightly slower than the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince's cloud light. It was just enough for the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince to constantly close in on him. Soon, the two of them were far away from the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain. Wu Qi turned around and laughed. "Why are you chasing me, you evil creature?" The Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince's body glowed with a golden light, but from within the golden light, a dark cloud could be faintly seen. Within the cloud, a strange-looking centipede-like beast with a dragon head was rolling. This should be the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince's true form. Hearing Wu Qi call him an evil creature, the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince was enraged. "Which evil creature dares to harm my disciple outside the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain?" he growled. Wu Qi grinned and prepared to say something naughty to the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince, but his expression suddenly changed. He stopped the cloud light in shock and raised his head to look at a spot in the distance. The Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince was wild with joy when he saw Wu Qi stop the cloud light. Yelling and yelling, he rushed to Wu Qi's side, pulled out the coiled dragon fire-tipped spear, and stabbed 1,080 times at Wu Qi's vital parts in a row. Clink, clink, clink. Sparks flew everywhere from Wu Qi's body. His robe was riddled with holes by the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince, but he was not harmed at all. Wu Qi's fleshly body was so strong that not even a supreme treasure of primal could break his defense. The Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince only had the cultivation base of the realm of Tao reasoning, and the coiled dragon fire-tipped spear was just a primordial immortal weapon crafted by him, and it was not even one that had matured yet. So, how could it possibly hurt Wu Qi? Wu Qi did not have the patience to waste time with him, so he shouted coldly, "Be a good boy and listen to me." Then he gave the prince a backhand slap on the back of the head and knocked him out. Conveniently, he tore off the Nightmare Dragon Crown Prince's arms and fed them to Ninetails, who was drooling. Then, Wu Qi threw him into the heaven-refining cauldron and ignored him. In the direction where he stared at just now, a strange sense of power had been gradually spreading, like a drop of ink in a glass of clear water, or like a virus spreading in a crowd. This sense of power had been gradually eroding the foundation of Pangu World. From the space structure of Pangu World to the flow of time, from the basic great Tao of Pangu World to the natural laws of metal, wood, water, fire, and earth, this aura was quietly seeping into Pangu World, as if it was familiarizing itself with everything in Pangu World. At first, this aura was not familiar with the great Tao of Pangu World, but after a quarter of an hour, it seemed to have begun to merge with the great Tao of Pangu World, and gradually gained a sense of agility, like a fish swimming in water. What an amazingly infectious power! In just a quarter of an hour, this aura had actually reached a level of understanding of the great Tao of Pangu World, which all gold immortals in Pangu World could never achieve in their entire lives. In less than an hour, the degree of tacit understanding between his aura and the heavenly Tao's laws would be comparable to that of a Tao reasoning pinnacle expert. In just a little more time, he might be able to improve his compatibility with the heavenly Tao to the Tao-breaking realm. Cold sweat dripped down from Wu Qi's forehead. It should be the world breaker named Thousand Heads. After being harmed by Wu Qi for a while, Thousand Heads finally came to Pangu World. And the way he entered was so strange and amazing. It was the great Tao of Pangu World, the great Tao of Pangu World. Even the most intelligent and persevering cultivators could not easily see through the great Tao of Pangu World. But, in less than 2 hours, this Thousand Heads had done what an ordinary Tao-breaking expert would need hundreds or even thousands of eons to do. Before long, the aura suddenly became extremely thin, almost undetectable. If not for the fact that Wu Qi had cultivated the scroll of stealing, which allowed his divine sense to merge with everything in the world, and became an innate divine sense, he really could not sense the existence of this aura. In just 2 hours, this Thousand Heads had really advanced to the level of Tao-breaking expert from the level of Tao-breaking expert who just entered Pangu World. After stepping into the realm of Tao-breaking, his aura could already merge with the great Tao and the aura of heaven and earth. Only the Tao-fusing saints in Pangu World could still sense his existence, and only a freak like Wu Qi could still sense his location. As for the other ordinary Tao-breaking experts, they had completely lost their sense of thousand heads. Wu Qi closed his eyes. At this moment, he was not worried that some Buddhist patriarch would send a stream of divine sense in his direction out of boredom. Originally, only the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and the 9 Tao patriarchs knew that thousand heads had been released from the seal, and the 7 Buddhist patriarchs had even fought a fierce battle with him. But now that thousand heads had entered Pangu world, and all the Tao-fusing experts had noticed it, Wu Qi did not believe that they would still be in the mood to care about other things. He could even sense that in the direction where thousand heads' aura came from, dozens of streams of divine sense that were tens of thousands of times hotter and hundreds of millions of times brighter than the sun were crazily rushing over. The 7 Buddhist patriarchs and the 9 Tao patriarchs might be pretending to be ignorant, but the Wahuang clan and the 18 saints were really startled. None of them could ignore the threat that a world breaker could pose to a world, especially when they themselves existed in this world, and their lives were closely linked to this world. Wu Qi slapped his forehead hard, then spun and transformed into a gust of wind, rushing toward the Great Spirit Vulture Mountain. While all the Tao-fusing experts were distracted by thousand heads, he should seize the opportunity to get the soul fixation pearl as soon as possible. Since thousand heads had entered Pangu world, the Tao-fusing experts had to fight back. In this way, the agreement signed between the Wahuang clan and the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and the 9 Tao patriarchs would fall apart. Wu Qi had just extorted a large sum of money from the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and the 9 Tao patriarchs, and now he had to think about how to survive the pursuit of the Buddhist patriarchs and the Daozu. With Wu Qi's current cultivation base, if he was discovered by any one of the 7 Buddhist patriarchs and the 9 Tao patriarchs, he would risk losing his soul with a single blow. He dared not to joke about his life. In the void where Wu Qi and the others were paying attention to with their divine senses, Thousand Heads, who had barely recovered his body, was squeezing into Pangu world from the chaotic world while panting heavily. Ji City in Pangu world was repelling Qiantu. The tremendous force of repulsion nearly prevented Qiantu from entering. Not only the great Tao of Pangu world, even all plants, flowers, plants, fishes, birds, animals, even rocks and soil in the outer space around Qiantu had been releasing a threatening sense of power, strongly repelling Qiantu from approaching. This was the self-protection instinct of Pangu world. Everything in Pangu world was trying its best to resist the invasion of thousand heads. But, just as Wu Qi had sensed, Qian Xing's long hair drilled into his body like a poisonous serpent, carefully analyzing the rhythm of the heavenly Tao of Pangu world. Before long, he gradually merged with the heavenly Tao of Pangu world, and soon possessed the attainment level equal to that of a Tao-breaking realm divine immortal. His aura blended with the great Tao of Pangu world. With a hideous smile, Thousand Heads slowly crawled into Pangu world from the chaos. A large group of foreign fiend celestials passed by Thousand Head in a group. When these ferocious foreign fiend celestials saw Thousand Head, they whistled and launched an attack on him. However, the attack of the tens of thousands of fiend celestials came to an abrupt halt the moment it was launched. Each of them had a thin black hair that constantly squirmed in between their eyebrows. Their blood essence was rapidly extracted by the hair, and in just a snap of a finger, the tens of thousands of fiend celestials were sucked dry, leaving behind empty shells. Qian Shou's pale face glowed with a bright light. He let out a long breath, then laughed with a creepy voice. He glanced at the void with his dark, weird eyes, then flashed across the void. Within a twinkling of an eye, he flashed across hundreds of star areas, heading straight to Empress Hua Palace. The control core of this world is in that place, he murmured to himself as he rushed toward Empress Hua Palace with a crazy killing intent. In front of the gate of Empress Hua Palace, Wahuang clan stood with the myriad spirit cauldron hovering over her head. She was clad in a purple cape, holding a white spirit pearl in her left hand and a 5-feet-long green sword in her right. She was staring solemnly in Thousand Heads' direction. A few fiery lights flashed around Wahuang clan. Great horns and a few other almighty experts of the Holy Alliance had arrived with their disciples as reinforcements. You're tuning in to the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.